Hey guys, it's been 15 months. But we're back with your Boom is in the Shot Series 2.
Hey, excuse me. You boom. Hey, mister. Hey, you boom. Your boom is in the shot.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Series 2, Season 2, reboot, whatever you want to call it. We're back. We're back. We couldn't decide which of those things we wanted to call it, so we're calling it all of them.
That was a last minute decision, but I'm okay with it. It's fine.
Roll with it. Guys, we have some awesome things coming up for this season and for the future of the podcast in the coming weeks and months and years and, decade, centuries, millennia.
We are going to be around for 1,000 years.
Yeah, we're going to be around for way too long, and you're going to get sick of us You're going to get sick of us a few weeks into the next 1,000 years, but we're going to be there for 1,000 years anyway. So deal with it. We got a lot of really cool stuff coming up. We got a whole new format. We have a whole new schedule that I think you guys are really going to like. We're talking about a lot of really cool stuff that we haven't talked about before, like not just movies and TV shows, but also
we're going to be doing
video
games.
Video games, guys, because honestly, Ben and I don't know if we've really gotten into this before, but we are just as much of video game guys as we are film and TV guys. So yeah, it's about time. It's about time we got into that.
If you guys have been watching and you've been loving the film content, that's not going anywhere. That's the primary focus of our channel. Of course. We are still Your Boom is in the Shot. But you know what? There are a lot of really cinematic games out there. Today, TJ and I talked for about 2 hours about Ghost of Tsushima, which came out last week as of the time of this recording. And I have to say, we've got some stuff that you guys are probably going to want to hear.
Yeah, that game is every bit as much cinema as it is video game, for better or worse. Mostly better, though.
But for you guys out there, if you're a Kurosawa fan, we could do a Kurosawa episode, which
I'm sure we will.
Speaking of
doing older movies, this episode is the first of a new concept that we are trying out, and that's going to be in our schedule called the
Ybiits Rewind.
And if you're wondering what Ybiits is, that's what we call our acronym, YBIITS, Ybiits.
Yeah, Your Boom is in the Shot is kind of a long title, but it's so goddamn funny.
It is. This Ybiits.
Ybiits Rewind, guys.
Yeah, Ybiits Rewind.
So this episode is technically going to be a Ybiits Rewind episode, but just so you know, this one's going to be a little bit different. This is our comeback episode, our revival episode, our premiere of Series 2. And like TJ said, we're going to be talking about some cool stuff.
Yeah. So like this one is going to be different from future ones. So future ones are going to be focused on, one particular work. It'll be, so the whole idea of the rewind is, we don't have to talk about things that are current. We could talk about older movies like Kurosawa, or even just that came out like a couple of years ago. If we wanted to say, do an episode on Get Out, or an episode on Inception or something.
There's a lot of content that not only did we miss over the last 15 months, but there's a lot of content that's been floating around the mediascape for a few years now. And there are channels out there, there are podcasts out there who talk about vintage stuff, but I think we're going to do something a little bit different. The idea of rewind, as we've been sort of, batting it back and forth, is that it's going to be an opportunity to talk about some stuff that maybe needs to be talked about, stuff that's really important to us,
stuff that we love,
stuff that you guys will probably love too.
Yeah. The only thing we're not going to talk about is Rosemary's Baby.
You're the one who brings it up, okay? At this point, I think you've probably brought it up more than I have.
I don't know about that.
Listen, it's a great movie, okay? I could talk about it for hours. You'll never, ever, ever hear me do that.
No, we're never going to do an episode on it, ever. Okay, so this inaugural Ybiits Rewind.
Oh, man.
Different from the future ones, and that's because, as Ben said at the top of this bad boy, it's been 15 months, guys. It's been a while, and we've missed a lot of shit. Like, we've really missed a lot of shit in these last 15 months. As Your Boom is in the Shot, that we really want to talk about. We're really excited to get into. So that being said, no more delay. Let's. This is the longest intro that we've ever done, and we'll probably ever do. Sorry, guys, but no, it's okay. I mean, look, man, they waited 15 months for this shit. Let's just string them on just a little longer, just a few more minutes. They can handle it.
Yeah, it's almost like we have topics to talk about.
It's almost like that.
But
yeah.
they don't know what they are yet, do they?
Yes, they don't. They don't. And they're not going to. No,
we're kind of hanging this carrot in front of their face and making them wait for it.
Yeah, we're gonna run through just different movies and TV shows from the last 15 months that we wanted to talk about. Most of which we've both seen, some of which only one of us have. But, we're going to try not to spend too long on each different work because, we have a lot to go through. So starting off, we just wanted to kind of go over like the state of the industry with COVID. Obviously, COVID's kind of the most relevant thing in the world right now, not just in the entertainment world. So it bears talking about,
especially if you live in America, which we do.
Yeah. It's one of the worst places to be during this pandemic.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. At least half of us aren't cooperating, so it's not ending. It's great.
Mm-hmm. It's great. It's something. Shout out.
And there's certain consequences, like the fact that, as Ben was talking about earlier, that you can't go to the movies, man. There's no movies out.
We have been on hiatus for 15 months, and as much as I want to blame it on COVID, that's not the only reason, but it is a big reason. It's been very difficult over the last few months to get back started into it. We wanted to kind of do a 1 year anniversary relaunch, and that was 5 months ago. And like 4 months ago, COVID sort of like came and smacked us all in the face.
Yep.
And one of the things that's been really hard is that there's been a lot of movies coming. I mean, you guys all know, you've all been experiencing it too. And there are a lot of movies we haven't been able to go see in theater. So what that does mean is that we get to explore our streaming options, I guess. And boy, have there been quite a few since we last talked to you. There's been a drop of a whole new streaming service, Disney Plus, which we're going to love to talk about.
Yes. Perfect segue. Because I also wanted to talk about Disney Plus and because Disney Plus is a big thing that happened during those 15 months when we last talked to you guys actually about a movie that's on Disney Plus, Avengers Endgame. Disney Plus was just a little glimpse on the horizon. So not that Disney Plus is like taking the entertainment world by storm or something, but it's definitely a big player out there now, particularly now that it has every Star Wars movie. It's got
every Marvel movie.
Pretty sure it's got every single MCU movie.
It's got the National Geographic collection. Yep. It's got the ESPN package.
It's got a lot of the old Marvel cartoons and stuff too.
Almost all
it's got the entire Simpsons.
Yeah, the entirety of the Simpsons. That in and of itself has been a huge draw for people to Disney Plus.
Yeah, it's been like impossible to stream the Simpsons without full on purchasing each season.
And arguably the most important aspect of Disney Plus, which is The Mandalorian.
Oh, yeah. Which is a great segue. See, guys, we're actually getting through this pretty quickly. We'll see if that lasts. Good segue into the next thing we wanted to talk about. We actually, like Ben was saying, we really did want to come back a while ago. We wanted to come back when everything was happening around Star Wars late last year. There was and then early into this year too, there was a lot, like especially in a few months late last year. There was Episode 9, there was The Mandalorian, there was Jedi Fallen Order, and then a few months later, there was, the final season of the Clone Wars. So yeah, let's try to break all that down, starting with, I guess, Episode 9.
I will say, if you guys have not watched this podcast before, TJ and I love Star Wars. I think we love Star Wars so much that it hurts us physically and mentally quite frequently.
It can. Actually, yeah. I mean, the whole reason, if we have, I don't know if we told the story before, I feel like we probably have, but the whole reason why we started Your Boom is in the Shot in the first place was because one day we were hanging out after production we were working on together for college, and we sat down on the stage in front of the green screen after everything was done. Everybody was packing up and leaving, and we just started talking about Episode 8, actually, because we both love that movie and have loved that movie from the time it came out, even when all of our friends
I still love it. You can fight me about it.
I love it.
And I'll happily fight. I have a lot of talking points, and I think that if you don't like that movie, which most of you probably don't, I'm going to tell you right now, you're just wrong.
Yeah. No, you are wrong. And Episode 9 is proof of the pudding, but that's a discussion for another minute or so from now.
Yeah.
Whenever we end up getting to that. But that's why we started, because we ended up talking about Episode 8, and it was 5 or 6 hours later, and we were still sitting there. It was dark outside. All the lights were dimmed except the studio lights we hadn't turned off yet. Yeah. And so we were like, we should probably start a podcast, at least then somebody else can get something out of these long-winded, ridiculous conversations we have about movies.
Yeah, and you know, series 1 was pretty popular. I mean, we had a lot of fun guests on there. We had a lot of feedback. Not as much as we wanted. We still haven't gotten any hate mail yet. Guys, you got to get on that. You got to send us that hate mail. Fucking hate mail. I just told you you're all wrong. Clearly, some of you out there are going to be like,
hey guys, if you want to tell us how much you fucking hate us, how badly we suck and all that, you know, all that stuff, yourboomisintheshot@gmail.com is exactly where you can do that. Please send us your hate mail. We will read it.
Tell us why you don't like the Jedi Order, and then we can talk about it on a future episode.
Right. Tell us why episode 9 is a better movie than episode 8.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Please
explain that to me.
If you disagree with us, or if you agree with us, by all means, positive feedback is great. But if you disagree with us, honestly, that's kind of even better.
If you think all 3 of the new movies are terrible, then that's also conversation.
And if you think all 3 of the new movies are the best in the entire series, you can send that in too. I don't think that.
Ryan, if you're out there, Ryan is my little brother. Ryan, if you're out there,
you're like,
I know that your favorite is the prequel series, and you're just wrong.
Hey man, respect though. I don't agree with him, but respect for that position. Respect, Ryan.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, that's not an easy position to take.
So no, it's
if
definitely
that's
not.
His hill to die on, then respect.
He's in the largest minority there.
Yeah,
so
that's for sure.
I love you, Ryan. If you're listening to this podcast, come on sometime and talk about why you think the prequel series.
Okay, so episode 9 sucks, and
it does.
And here's the thing: it's not like a completely unwatchable movie. It's not like it has no redeeming qualities. There's some good stuff in that movie, but the whole overall movie it doesn't really land at its core. And I think, you know, Ben and I are definitely in a position, because of our love of episode 8, to feel that way. And the biggest part of that, for me at least, is that episode 9 really takes a lot of care, like every step of the way, to undo like everything that we loved about episode 8.
It's a massive retcon.
Yeah.
And it's like, to try and make this as quickly as possible, I think there was a lot of really genius stuff that happened in episode 8 that was really smart, really clever, that got really, really, really hated and shat on by the fans of the series.
Yep.
For no real good reason other than that it was more complicated than what they were used to from a Star Wars film.
Right.
And I think that episode 9, the producers and Disney looked at that and said, oh, well, we can't make that mistake again. So they made the dumbest movie they possibly
could. Overcorrected.
They 100% overcorrected.
Mm-hmm.
And it hurts. It hurts because like by the end of episode 8, really loved like all of the characters from that story. And
like Rose, who's not in 9
at all. Yeah,
at all, really.
And I think Rose is a really uncomfortable character, but I think that's part of the point.
Yeah, I was never in love with the Rose and Finn romance, but I thought she was an interesting and refreshing character.
Well, and I thought what was special about that romance is that it wasn't a romance, is that Finn it was unrequited from the beginning. And I think
it was kind of just a crush.
Yeah, and I think that's really unusual for like a blockbuster family movie where like their romance isn't really a romance.
Yeah.
And like that was one of the things that I thought was really interesting with Kylo Ren and Rey. And then they just like...
And Kylo Ren's whole arc, like this is one of the things I really, really loved about episode. It's probably the second biggest thing I loved about episode. I'll get into the first in a second, but Kylo Ren's arc, like it all crystallizes for me in that scene after he's told that he's not Vader, you know, and he gets back into the elevator and he smashes his helmet in anger. Mm-hmm. And that's when he stops. To me, that was like, is when he stops trying to be a Vader clone and he just becomes Kylo Ren. He just is who he is. He's Kylo Ren. He's not Anakin Skywalker, and that's fine. And in fact, Kylo Ren could be even more powerful than Anakin Skywalker if he accepts that he's Kylo Ren and he just does his thing, right? And then what does this movie do? One of the first things it does is like, let's repair the helmet and put it back on him, because like a lot of the fanboys got pissed off that he did that, because they
wheel back his character development. And I think the same thing happened with Rey and her family backstory. I think
that's the number one thing.
That's absolutely. I mean, we've talked about this at length and how they assassinated her character by making her like the granddaughter of Palpatine. Spoiler alert, she's the granddaughter of Emperor Palpatine. Right.
Well, yeah. Spoiler alert for everything we're going to talk about. So you'll know what we're talking about because we'll announce it first before we spoil you. But yeah, spoiler alert.
We probably also aren't going to go in depth on spoilers for anything other than Star Wars.
Yeah.
Because I think this is the single biggest category of this episode.
Sure. Yeah. But you also can't talk about you can't talk about episode 9 without spoiling it because of like the inherent
things that are wrong with
problems.
it are the things that are quote unquote spoilers.
Yeah. Yeah, like Rey being a Palpatine, it's just awful, right? Because like it takes so much away from her, right? And it takes so much away from the concept that I think was really at the heart thematically of episode 8, which was that, you know, you don't need to be born into a special family. You don't need to be the chosen one. You don't need to be this person of destiny in order to make good in the universe, in order to be a hero, right? Anybody can be a hero. It's like, you know, one representation of that is Rey's parents being nobody and Rey coming from nothing. Another representation of that is Broom Boy.
Broom Boy,
you know, like Broom Boy at the end. A lot of people didn't get Broom Boy. The whole point is that the Force lives in all of us. The Force, you know, it can be harnessed by different people to different extents. Different people are more Force sensitive, right? But you don't have to be the chosen one. I
think I remember when episode 8 came out, and I used to fight with people every day. All of my friends are nerds, by the way, guys. So like, that's why I fought every day. But the Broom Boy scene. So at the very end of the movie, there's like right before the credits, a scene of a little Force sensitive slave boy. And it's like, he's not named. He's not like, the point is that all my friends are like, oh, he's going to be the main character for the next series, or like, oh, he's in the next movie, or like, he's got the Force. It's like,
hey guys, it's not that deep.
It's not that deep. The point is that anybody can be a Jedi, right? That like,
the whole point is that he isn't anybody. He's nobody important.
Just like,
he's nobody special. He's nobody important.
Just like Rey, he is not a chosen like God figure the way that Anakin was.
Rey was a powerful person for the same reason that Luke originally was before we found out that he was a Skywalker. Not to take anything away from Luke, even him being a Skywalker, but, you know, back when Luke was just some farm boy who decided to go on an adventure and try to make better for the universe and take down the bad guys, right? Rey was just some girl who was just off on Jakku. She was the
epitome of an empowered female. And I think that's why one of the reasons why a lot of people didn't like that. There's the whole feminist aspect of episode 8
about
Star Wars. But like, I think that was definitely a thing that I heard a lot from people, you know, maybe that weren't my friends, but that were in the Star Wars.
People were also, it was this bigger issue with episode 8 where people were pissed off about, you know, like the female power with like Leia and with Laura Dern's character. I always forget her name. The purple haired general.
I don't remember her name.
And like it's dumb. Like, all those plots were
even
all
the original
super sound.
Star Wars, Leia was meant to be an empowered female character.
Leia is an empowered female in all the movies. Leia's always been a badass.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, always.
100%. And giving her the Force is totally like in line with Star Wars content. Like, it's not something that felt out of place when I saw it. It shocked me, but it was not out of place.
Yeah, and just final words on the whole Rey thing is like because I gotta say this, like, Episode 9 completely takes all of Rey's power away. Not physically, obviously, but it takes away the power that she had in being a hero who chose to be a hero, and that had power because she developed her power, because she wanted to develop her power, not because she was the grandson of some powerful Sith Lord, or granddaughter rather, of some powerful Sith Lord, and, you know, had this inherent power already in her, and that the strings were being pulled, and et cetera, right? It just kind of sweeps the whole rug out from under Rey in a really disheartening way that I think, at least for me, just puts a sour taste in my mouth on the end of this Skywalker saga.
Not to mention the stupid fucking kiss, which makes me angry.
You guys want to talk about dumb forced romances? Like,
all right, so like,
I mean, they were playing that for a while. I get it,
but it was all like, it was in episode 8. It felt to me like super, like, non-consensual, right? Like, Kylo was coming on super strong.
He was like in her DMs, and she was like, "Whoa!"
And she was like, "Settle down, boy."
Yeah,
and like, I think that a lot of people were like, "Oh, the bad boy!" Like, I ship it, but like, I think the truth is that Rey was never meant to have a romantic partner. It wasn't meant to be Finn. It wasn't meant to be Kylo. She wasn't meant to have one, and I think that was the way it should have been. Oh, you know?
Yes, I agree with you. I just, that made me think of just one more thing I have to address with episode 9. And Ben, I know you're going to agree with me here. Episode 9, another one of the biggest problems with it is it has 0 balls to kill anybody.
Or
do any, that's there are so many times in this movie where you think they've killed somebody.
You're like, oh shit, they killed
and then they're
Chewbacca.
Like, never mind. Like Chewbacca,
like, oh,
you're like, oh my God, Chewbacca. And it's like such a heart-wrenching moment. And then, and not that I'm saying I'm mad that Chewbacca didn't die. It's just like the movie didn't have to do this so many times because it does it with Chewbacca. It pretends it kills him to get the shock. And then it's like, never mind, no consequences. He's still alive. He's fine. It does it again with C-3PO when it, pretends it wipes him out. It does it with Rey toward the end.
Yeah.
You know?
She gets brought back to life.
Yeah.
I mean, Kylo dies, but like...
Yeah, it kind of does it with him too.
But he's a villain, so it doesn't feel as... Like, I mean, he redeems himself in the final arc, but they made him the rewrite of Darth Vader in a really cheesy and bad way. So I didn't care about him when he died. Like, I was like, okay.
Yeah, he just does what Anakin already did, again, 40 years ago.
Yeah. And he's not the chosen one, and it's like a totally different feeling than before. Also, episode 8 set Kylo up to be the big bad.
It did.
And then they took that away from him too, which is like, it's just frustrating. Episode 9 was a frustrating film.
It could have been so much better than it was. I think it's the biggest tragedy. Yeah. It could have been so much better if if Lucasfilm and Disney just followed through on the threads that were planted in the prior movie.
No matter whether fans at first glance disliked it or not.
Yeah.
All that being said, one thing that I will say I thought was really awesome about episode 9. Well, I guess there were two things that I particularly liked. I liked, and this is sort of a conjoined thing, but I liked the presence of the ships from the other Disney Star Wars content. So you saw the Ghost from Star Wars Rebels was in the like invasion of Rebel Alliance.
Oh, the end game on your left scene.
Yeah, the end game on your yes, exactly. And I thought that was really amazing because like any callback to Rebels like is important to me because I really love the like all.
Don't forget the Ahsoka voice.
Well, that was going to be my other thing. TJ.
Yeah, all right.
I said these two things were related.
I kind of figured that was your second thing.
Yeah, it was that was the first thing in two parts. So
it was technically Ahsoka's first appearance in a film.
And it hopefully won't be her last. Ahsoka is one of the greatest characters that has ever come out of the Star Wars universe.
Yep.
I think Ahsoka's character is very much what Rey's character could have been, like that level of badass female empowerment. And
she's like my favorite character in the whole. Like
I think she's probably mine too. To be honest with you,
she's never been in a film. It's crazy.
But she's coming to the Mandalorian, so that's close enough for me.
Do you want to get into the Mandalorian?
I have one last thing I want to talk about episode 9, and that's the final scene in episode 9 on Tatooine where Rey has her own custom lightsaber and she buries the Luke lightsabers, and then sees the Force ghosts. And I both liked and hated that scene.
Yeah, because it did feel like pandering, that's why I hated it. But like, I think I do like that her lightsaber's yellow. I think that's a security really force awesome kind of thing going on to like Jedi was it lore. The Sentinels that had the Sentinels had yellow lightsabers. Yellow lightsabers are supposedly like the oldest lightsabers in the Order, and it's not unheard of to have a yellow lightsaber in the Star Wars universe, but it's the first time we see one in a film. So I think that's another cool choice that they made for her. I also don't like her literally taking on the Skywalker name and legacy. Like I feel like that could have just been like spiritually carrying on the Skywalker legacy. And that was going to be my complaint about that scene, is that I thought the inclusion of a scene like that was really smart, but they ruined it by explaining it to you. Yeah. Like the Force ghosts could have shown up there, not said anything. Rey could have buried the lightsabers and then could have stood up, and then it could have been like a slow, like wide shot to fade to black. And then it would have been implied, right? Implied that she's carrying on the Skywalker legacy. Right. They didn't have to fucking tell us. Yeah. Like, no, I'm not stupid. It's a lot of that stuff where like this is what we meant by like overcorrecting the ship, guys. Like they were so like shook by like a lot of the negative fan response from 8 that they just like totally overcorrected the ship and crashed into like an iceberg, and it's not pretty. But there are redeeming elements of it. I mean, like the movie's gorgeous. Yeah, it's super as one would expect. The whole new trilogy's been gorgeous. Working with the budget that they've got, it'd be really kind of amazing if they didn't have such a beautiful visual. Yeah. Well, but you know what doesn't have the budget that did is the Mandalorian. And I was just going to. And the Mandalorian is like, honestly, guys, it's to my eyes, it's on par as much as it needs to be. I think it's better with any Star Wars movie. I think it's better than most of them in terms of cinematography. I mean, most of them are older, to be fair, but like I think it's more or less on the level. Like, we're going to take the Empire
that Strikes Back, and we're going to put that on a pedestal, right? That goes over here in its own category because it's the best Star Wars film ever made.
Yeah.
That aside, The Mandalorian is probably my next favorite piece of Star Wars content, if not for its connection to the wider Star Wars universe, but because of how sort of innovative an idea it was for a live action Star Wars adaptation.
Yeah.
It is essentially a Star Wars Western. And I think an excellent job was done in producing it. I think it's
great.
Really
it's well
smart.
cast.
Yeah,
it's extremely well shot.
Well cast.
The soundtrack is amazing.
Oh man, I could listen to that end credit song like
it's so good. It's so westerny.
Over and over.
Yeah, it's got such a cool vibe to it.
Yeah.
It's like it's so different from everything you've ever heard in Star Wars, but also
it feels like Star
fits.
Wars.
Yeah, it feels like Star Wars. Exactly.
Yeah. It's so hard to describe. If you haven't seen The Mandalorian, you're doing yourself a disservice. Go out and watch it.
Yeah.
If you're
even just for Baby Yoda, guys.
Like, Baby Yoda is
yeah.
like, I guess technically it's the child is the official name.
Because like Christy, my fiance, hasn't watched The Mandalorian, but she's watched several of the Star Wars films, and she was like, "Oh, it's like it's when Yoda was a baby. That's Baby Yoda." And I'm like, "No, it's just called Baby Yoda because it's like it's after Yoda's
so
death."
much more complicated
Mandalorian takes place 5 years after Episode 6, I believe. And so Yoda's dead. So this is only, I think.
I mean, he might be a Baby Yoda.
Yeah,
we don't know. We don't know. We don't know what's going on.
Yeah, who knows what's going on? But to what we know now, it's a different creature. But we've never seen, like, in the way that we've seen like more Wookiees besides Chewbacca, we've never seen more of Yoda's species. All we ever knew was that's Yoda. You know what I mean? So this is the first time we've really seen.
I could talk for hours about the Yoda lore and like his species. And there's only one other. It's Yaddle, which is another Jedi on the Jedi Council, and like it's never explained anything about their race or their homeworld.
Yeah, we know pretty much nothing about them.
Long time.
Yeah,
and I've heard sort of stories on the interwebs. I don't know the true validity of them, but stories that George Lucas had a very, very firm grasp on the concept of Yoda and his species, and that was not allowed to be explored by extended universe content creators for the majority of Star Wars history. And this is really the first time that that's getting elaborated on in any sort of way. Which is another interesting thing about The Mandalorian. But what I think is truly amazing about it is that they were able to create such a beautiful show with beautiful sets and that incredibly advanced like screen filming thing that they have set up.
Oh yeah, that whole technology is incredible.
Yeah, the ingenuity that went into making The Mandalorian is incredible.
And that whole documentary, guys, that's on Disney Plus. That dives into like that shows that dives into a lot of that stuff.
Yeah,
is if you haven't seen that and you've seen The Mandalorian, I highly recommend it. It's awesome to see like the behind the scenes of how they made this and like the passion of the directors that they got involved. In this thing. You know?
I mean, Dave Filoni is like one of my favorite people.
Dave Filoni is the keeper of the keys for Star Wars.
He's definitely passing the legacy down to Star Wars. I think while maybe not being the most important necessarily single figure in The Mandalorian, I think his influence was
it's him and Jon Favreau are like the main like team there.
I guess Jon Favreau is always he's the face of The Mandalorian as a production, but I think Dave Filoni and his work on Star Wars Rebels and Star Wars The Clone Wars is proof that like if anybody has, like you said, the keeper of the keys for the Star Wars IP, it's him. He cares about it. He's the lore master. He is, and he cares about it in a way that a lot of Star Wars writers maybe don't. Not to say that they don't care about it, but
but you can tell that he's a fan first. Like he oozes like that fan energy, like that. I love this stuff. I live for this stuff energy. He's not just doing it like it's not a job for him. Absolutely. It is, but it's not just like a job.
I mean, if you watch the documentary about the making of The Mandalorian, every scene that Dave Filoni is in, he is wearing a Star Wars themed piece of apparel. He's the only one who's doing that. I specifically remember in the first episode he was wearing a Wolfpack hoodie, which is like one of the more obscure groups of clones from the Clone Wars series. And like every time I saw it, I'm just like, oh man, you're my guy.
Yeah, and then also goes on like this story about the first time that he met George when he was first trying to come over to work for Lucasfilm, and it was like a dream come true, best thing that ever happened in his life. And like, it's just such a touching story. It's like, yeah, that's
He's
the kind of
exactly where he
person
belongs.
that you want in charge of an IP you care about, is somebody who cares about it as much as you do. So yeah.
And it permeates the work that he's done. I mean, like
Clone Wars, dude.
Clone Wars, and Star Wars Rebels. I know a lot of people out there have mixed feelings about that show, but I think that
I've come around to it. I didn't love it at first, but I've come to love it.
I think the problem with Rebels is that in the first season and a half or so,
it's a children's show through and through.
Yeah, because it's like,
this is very basic.
It's the same problem that you have with Clone Wars, is that in the first few seasons, it's just like not fully fledged out yet. And I think that they're still trying to find their target audience. And in the first season, it feels like there's a lot of kid jokes. It's not very dark, not very complex. But as it goes on, the lore starts becoming really relevant. Like as Ezra matures, so does the quality of the show. And once you get towards that last two seasons, I think it's hit its stride, and I like it as much.
And same thing with the Clone Wars guys, which like,
oh my gosh,
to start getting into that, guys, like,
jeez,
the last season of the Clone Wars is phenomenal.
Beautifully animated, beautifully acted,
gorgeously cinematic.
Written.
It's amazing.
And it's funny because they're episodes that had been on the shelf that people had known the entire plot to for years, and it's still just is amazing. Like it was such a treat to watch.
Yeah, there's like 3 disparate arcs that are like all loosely, related to the overall like core story.
Yeah. And Order 66 happening as, something that's not the climax of episode 3.
Yeah, seeing it
really
unfold in the way that we were able to see it with Captain Rex and the other clones who are wearing,
Ahsoka Tano
helmets, armor. Then having to turn on her, and they have no choice. Like they can't control it. And Rex, like, because he knows about, the whole fives thing and all that, he has enough awareness to be able to resist it to some extent, but even he can't help be overcome by it at first.
For those of you, if you've been following Star Wars the way that we have, this is a really beautiful point in the Star Wars history, because like the Clone Wars final season and Jedi Fallen Order, the video game, which we may talk about in future episodes, as well as like a lot of the content about Star Wars separate from like Star Wars Rebels, it's all dealing with this like huge movement in like regime changes. Like the Order 66, for instance, is like a major part of Jedi Fallen Order. It is the thing that causes Star Wars Rebels to be the way that it is. I mean, like Kanan exists because of Order 66. And you never really see it happen, save for like the few montage shots in episode 3, which don't really do sort of the horror of that event a whole lot of justice.
It's kind of like in episode 3, a lot of it is kind of just like, it's very quick, and it's not given a whole lot of weight. Like the heaviest part of it is like Anakin and the younglings, which is pretty heavy, granted. Like that's a pretty horrifying moment, but like it doesn't have the same emotional impact when you're seeing it play out with like these characters that you have grown to love over the course of 7 seasons.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that like, Anakin in episode 3 is hard to relate to.
He is, but like seeing the Clone Wars informs his character. If you watch the Clone Wars through its final season, which by the way overlaps with episode 3 and just sets it up and sets into it perfectly. I completely it completely changes that movie in so many ways.
So long story short, you guys have to go watch the Clone Wars. You should just watch all the Star Wars content because it's all
and go play Fallen Order, which we could deep dive into that again this episode, but we'll get into another one. I think that's a game that deserves its own Ybiits rewind.
Yeah. That being said, we have a lot of other content to cover
do.
today.
The next thing on the itinerary here is Spider-Man Far From Home.
Yeah. You know what's really great? I talk all the time about my opinions on Marvel movies. And if you guys remember the last times we've talked about Spider-Man, I've always been on board. And I don't think that this time is that much different. It's been a while since I've seen Far From Home, but I remembered liking it.
Not as much as movie. And you guys, if you've listened to our previous episodes, we love Jake Gyllenhaal. So that's a big part of it too.
He's like an incredibly phenomenal actor.
Yeah.
And like there are very few films that he's been in that I'm like,
I think pretty much everything I've seen with him in it where he's like a major player has been at least a good movie, if not great.
The only exception that comes to mind is Prince of Persia.
That's one of the few I haven't seen, actually.
Yeah, it's the only one where I feel like he was not utilized for anything other than the fact that he's a hunk. I think they just were like, who's that hot guy? Let's make him
who's that hot guy
for this really bad movie with really
Hollywood
bad
do
writing.
be like that.
Yeah, and that tends to be what happens when you do a really not soulful adaptation of a really important.
The thing about the Spider-Man MCU movies that's been like really great is that they've had this really like, and this might be as a result of them being like more directly produced by like Sony, but they have like this really genuine kind of like low to the ground heart that like the rest of the MCU, as much as I love it, like doesn't have quite the same way. The MCU has heart, but it's very different than what
I think that the MCU is totally soulless. So I think if you're saying it has heart is just wrong. But that aside,
but the Spider-Man movies they have soul. They have heart.
They do. I think there's good or bad. There's a little bit of character to the scrappiness of the older Spider-Man movies.
In the way that this movie, kind of reckons with, again, spoiler alert, guys, reckons with the death of Tony Stark. And the way that Peter Parker is grappling with that, it kind of helps us as the audience, process that trauma and that grief, because we're kind of going through it with Peter, and that's a big part of what makes this movie like really heartwarming and touching and affecting in a way that like not a lot of these superhero movies, again, as much as I love them, not a lot of them are,
I mean, I think a lot of how I feel about Far From Home is in line with what I said about Homecoming, which I think mostly boils down to that the depiction of Spider-Man in the MCU is a really faithful depiction of Spider-Man from the comics. Yeah. He's one of the few characters from the MCU that is like that. That is super
because he's like an actual like high school kid. Like Tobey Maguire looked 31 from like the first movie, and Andrew Garfield pretty much same thing. But absolutely. With Tom Holland, you're like, that's a 15-year-old. Right. And in real life, he's actually like 20 or something. But still, he looks like he plays by him as a teenager
really well. Yeah. And he has an energy that Spider-Man is supposed to have that neither of the previous major Spider-Man actors were really able to
He's like
capture.
So curious.
He's like curious about the
world.
Tobey Maguire was an edgelord. And Tom Holland is like the opposite of that. And Spider-Man can be edgy sometimes, but he's supposed to be funny and like fun and like young and youthful. And I think that's the Spider-Man that we know and that we love and that we needed in film. And
he's like, he really is like a kid, going through this extraordinary journey, which I think is like one of those universal themes, that just resonates.
I think that the way that the Spider-Man movies have, the both of them, of the MCU Spider-Man movies have been, is how an MCU movie should be. I think that like the grander scheme of the MCU, I care a lot less about.
Yeah.
But
because the MCU movies have gotten so caught up in like, that they're all connected and trying to like
huge and that like
everything is a huge spectacle, and not that there's anything inherently wrong with a huge spectacle, but I think that there's a certain point where it takes away from like just the core of following one story, and that's like where I think a lot of that heart and effectiveness of the Spider-Man movies and the MCU comes into play. Like both of the two of them, they feel really self-contained. I mean, even if Tony Stark is in the first one and Happy Hogan's in this one, and Nick Fury is there, like all that, there's still these stories that are like their own things.
Absolutely. And if you look at like my favorite MCU movies, it's like Iron Man 1, Black Panther, Spider-Man.
Is really self-contained ones.
Yeah, they're all ones that are like
they're just stories that are just happy to be their story.
They don't get dragged down by the clashing of the themes from other character stories. And I think it's like a lot of people out there love Thor Ragnarok, and y'all have heard my dislike of that movie before, but I think part of what it is that movie got like reskinned to fit the MCU aesthetic, and like Thor got reskinned to fit the MCU aesthetic, and that's one of the reasons why I don't really love it.
Granted, I still think Ragnarok's the best Thor, but also like it's not really a high bar.
Yeah, I think
the first two Thors are pretty bad. I think all the
Thors are pretty bad. Honestly, I don't like Ragnarok. I think that,
which is funny because you've also come around to Taika Waititi, so
yeah, you still like a director and not like all of his work.
No, I agree, but it's just funny that like
I mean, I love Jojo Rabbit. That didn't end up on our list. That was something that we should have put on our list.
Oh, you're right.
Things to talk about.
Yeah.
Well, now is a good.
Ybiits rewind.
This is a good segue. Yeah. I still hate Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah.
I still hate it.
But you don't hate this movie. Trying to corral us to stay on topic with this stuff and bang this out. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
This is going to be probably the least interesting episode of all of the episodes we put out.
Yeah, but it's so necessary. Like we couldn't just pretend these 15 months didn't happen.
I like to liken this to the first episode of Twin Peaks. For those of you out there who've seen Twin Peaks, it's one of my favorite series of all time. The first episode is hella long. It's like a movie in and of itself. And nothing Twin Peaks like happens the entire first episode. Like if you've seen the series, you know what I mean when I say that. If you haven't, the first episode reads like a early 90s cop drama, and that's it. Like there's nothing weird going on. There's nothing special happening. It's just like, oh, this is just a movie about a cop drama in like Northern Oregon with a lot of characters. When you get to the second episode, people start solving crimes by throwing rocks at bottles and like there are spooky ghost wizards and like.
So basically what Ben is saying is that there is some extended housekeeping that has to necessarily happen.
Right. The first episode of Twin Peaks is introducing all of the characters.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're doing. This is housekeeping, you know. This is just like a necessary evil in a lot of ways. Like we really wanted to, you know, address these last few months to kind of unburden ourselves and move on to the future of what we want to do going forward. Enough
apologizing. Yes. You got to get back on track.
Okay. So I do want to wrap up Spider-Man. So yeah, I loved this movie. I loved Jake Gyllenhaal's performance in it. I loved the twist involving him and how well that was hidden.
Yeah.
You know, like you really do buy that he is actually who he says he is, and that he's trying to help. And it's all very convincing.
But that's because like I think from a more meta perspective, you know that like something's got to happen to drive the plot.
Yeah, you do know that, but like it does that thing that like all great mystery movies do, where they hide their twist in plain sight, and they hide it so well that you don't see it coming, you know, on first watch. And then when you go watch it again, it's sorry about this dog, guys. Ben's neighbor is
sorry.
His dog is losing his shit.
We lost access to the radio studio.
Yeah,
we were previously recording, and we've got a pretty awesome setup here, except for that damned dog next door.
Yeah,
he's quiet about like 85% of the time.
You made me look bad.
Yeah. He's a rotten bastard too. Like I went out there and it was like he was like whimpering because his like owners like left him outside or something. I don't know.
I feel bad.
But yeah, I felt bad. So I went to the fence and I like stuck my hand through, and he like came up, and I'm like, it's okay, boy. Like we can be friends. And he's like trying to bite me.
Fuck you.
Yeah, he was like, fuck you. And he tried to bite me. I was like, oh, all right. I see. You're a little bastard. So I went back to what I was doing.
Yeah, I guess I don't feel as bad now. It's fine. If you're going to be a dick, we could have been friends, bro. Fuck you.
I tried to be friends with that dog, but he's a dick. So, and now he's ruining our podcast. So, you know, have fun with the barking in the background. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, sorry, guys. It's just it hides itself. The mystery hides itself really well, and it's so obvious on second watch. You're like, how didn't I pick that up? But that's the mark of all great mysteries, which brings me into our next topic, which was one of my favorite movies that's come out in the last several years. Knives Out.
Oh yeah, Knives Out was so good. Yes. Wow, I wasn't expecting
more Ryan Johnson love.
Yeah, that was definitely, that's where it's at. I loved that movie. And I didn't think I would. I remember watching the trailers in theaters. I think I saw the trailer for Knives Out when I went to see Joker. And I was like, this movie looks super hokey. It's like, what is it? It's like Clue, but
it's like Clue, but a thriller is what it kind of was marketed like.
And the trailer, they keep showing the giant throne of knives, and it's like, that's like the cheesiest thing ever, right? In my mind as a trailer.
And it also seems so star-studded that it kind of seemed like it was destined to be one of those movies that falls over.
Yeah, it looked like a cash
all the star weight.
It looked like a cash grab.
Yeah.
And it was definitely not that.
No. This movie, it's brilliant. It's
had me on the edge of my seat. There are a few times that a murder mystery can be so thrilling to a contemporary like movie watcher, and I think this film hit that out of the park. I didn't know how the movie was going to end. I had every prediction I made was basically off, like 90% of the time.
Yep. Yeah, it's just twist on twist on twist.
Yeah, but in a good way, good way. And by the end of it, I was like, wow, what an excellent way to conclude this film. We're going to try to avoid spoilers, but Knives Out, that's definitely, I think both of us can agree, one of the better films of the last 15 months.
Yeah, and that honestly is probably going to be a good candidate for a Ybiits Rewind down the line.
Yeah,
I want to deep dive super hard on that movie.
I do an episode on that.
Yeah, and so the next movie actually you already briefly referenced is Joker. Joker is
that was a phenomenon.
The rare rousing success that Warner Bros. And DC whipped out.
Yeah. Wow. So like,
in my opinion, you could feel free. We actually haven't talked about this movie at all.
We haven't. You don't know how I feel about that movie.
No, I don't.
That's really great. All right. So, as you guys know, I hate superhero movies. I don't hate superhero movies, but I oftentimes talk shit about superhero movies on our podcast.
He's more critical than the average bear.
I like my movies to be intellectually challenging, and superhero movies are rarely that.
How dare you?
Joker, I really fucking like that movie.
Yes. Oh, it had me in suspense.
Yeah,
bro.
that's what I was going for. So, I was going into it like kind of not sure how I was going to feel about it.
Yeah.
I'm not a Batman fan in particular. I love Spider-Man. I've talked about that in the past. My love for Spider-Man is mirrored by my hatred for Batman.
Wow, that's cold.
Isn't that something?
That is cold.
It is. All right. So like, I'm going to accept that this is probably a pan shot, but like,
that's a honey wagon.
You think it's a honey wagon? You think it's that bad, dude?
Say that.
Oh no,
Batman is a national treasure, you bastard.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Batman, guys. All right, so like, I think that part of my dislike for Batman is just like leftover angst from high school of like being sick and tired of people who were like, Batman could beat any superhero because he's Batman. He plans for every contingency, and like, I'm just sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of the Batman merchandise. I'm sick and tired of the Batman apologizing. I'm sick and tired of.
But what about the Batman character and stories themselves? Don't be so informed by the
by the fandom.
Yes.
I think that a lot of them are annoying. I
agree.
I think that some of them are really good. I really like the Dark Knight trilogy.
Hell yeah.
I think that like Batman as a character can be interesting, but can also really easily be like kind of dumb.
We're gonna have to do a Batman episode at some point.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. I'm sure we will, guys. And you can send me hate mail about how wrong I am for disliking Batman. But that aside, Joker, I thought really hit it out of the park. It's not a Batman movie.
No,
and that's really important.
I mean, it shoehorns in a lot more Batman stuff than I would have liked. That was probably my biggest problem with the movie.
Stuff that was shoehorned.
But it's not a Batman movie ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Batman aspect of that film is just the character's connection to the Wayne family, and that never really, to me, felt super Batman-like. Like it didn't. You could have watched that movie never having seen a Batman movie, never having read a comic, never having heard anything about Batman, and you wouldn't know that like Batman was relevant to that film at all.
Yeah.
The only thing that does it is like the scene where he's talking to Bruce Wayne as a child. That's like the immediate call to like, he's going to be Batman one day.
Yeah. Like him squeezing little Bruce Wayne's cheeks and making him smile.
Yeah.
And the fact that like, spoiler alert, that the end of the film like results in the murder of
his parents
as a direct result of riots caused by his actions.
Yeah. So I think what's amazing about Joker is that Joker is a really awesome commentary on like a lot of different topics,
mostly mental health. I think that's the biggest one.
Mental health,
societal unrest for sure.
And I think poverty. That like there's a really harsh critique of how people with mental illness are treated in American society. And I think that's like a lot of the message of that film.
Yeah, like, you know, the beginning of The Spiral really is like the funding getting cut where he like loses his medication and his counseling and all that, you know. That's like it's just mental health is not prioritized in like the ways that it should be. And that's a thing that the movie like really sets up. And there was one line in particular, it wasn't a spoken line, but it was written in his journal that gave me goosebumps when I saw the movie in theaters. And it says, I might not get the exact wording right, but it basically says the worst part about having a mental illness is that everybody expects you to act as if you don't.
Yeah.
You know, like it's like, and I always thought about that, like, cause that is so true. And that's,
For sure.
you know, like, people don't really think about that. If you have a broken arm, like no one's like, give me 100 push-ups, you know what I mean?
Right.
But if you have like, you know, crippling depression, people are like, get over it, go socialize, you know, like, just don't worry about it. Just be happy.
Yeah. Stop laughing because it's not appropriate for this current situation.
Right.
I mean, I think another aspect of that is how bad humans are to each other. And there's a big like class inequality thing that happens in that film where all of the people of the upper class, like the TV star and the Wayne family, like they're all bad to him, like consistently. And it pushes him over the edge. And that unrest that he feels is mirrored in the society of all of these, you know, poor people who are, you know, disenfranchised with Gotham. That ends in the culmination that is the riot at the end of the film, which is like kind of awesome. Like,
oh yeah.
And I think that version of Joker might be my favorite version of Joker that's out there.
I would agree. Honestly, even over Heath Ledger. No disrespect at all to Heath Ledger's performance. It's amazing, and it will live on forever.
Joker, though. I mean,
it is.
He's the Batman. He's the Joker that fights Batman. Like Heath Ledger is the perfect antithesis to Batman.
It's less about Joaquin Phoenix's performance as the Joker, which is amazing, like the way he can laugh even when his eyes are crying. But it's just what that character is in that telling of the character.
I will say though, Joaquin Phoenix, man, like the things that he did to his body for that role, and like
he's like 100 pounds,
and like just the way that he like pushes his shoulder blade out, and like has that like
so
super
disturbing and gross,
and it works on so many levels. I think that to me the one real drawback of that film, the thing that I have the biggest problem with, is that final scene, the end credit scene.
Yeah, it's kind of like unnecessary
in the asylum. I think it takes away.
I think it should have ended with him on the car.
Yeah, I agree.
You know,
well, there's a couple of moments in that film where it feels like it's going to end.
It does,
and then there's a little bit more.
It feels like it's going to end when they're pulling back and there's all the TV screens with the news. That was I agree, because the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, that's just where it's going to end.
And then he's in the car,
and
then the car crashes. Then he gets on top of the car and does the lay down thing on the car, and then you're like, oh, that's where it's going to end. And then it's in the asylum. All of a sudden.
That did feel more like a tag. Like a tag scene onto the movie more than like an actual natural ending.
It did. And I think that it took away a lot because it was like
it was like played for a laugh.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like after this like really serious story is wrapped up, you know, it's like played for like, haha, he's like running through the halls, wacky thing. Joker. They can't catch him. I feel like that was one of those fucking Warner Bros. Things where they were like, you got to make him be the Joker at the end, you know?
Yeah. Which is totally unnecessary because like the Joker that we have, especially like the Dark Knight Joker, like the Heath Ledger Joker, like I could totally see Joaquin Phoenix's Joker becoming that kind of Joker.
Oh yeah.
And like I think that's a really amazing feat that they were able to make a Joker that so much wasn't the Joker that we know, but still felt like he could be that supervillain maybe a few years earlier.
Oh yeah, I can definitely see him developing into, you know, that Joker. The only thing is, like, you know, with Bruce Wayne being so young, if they were going to play him against Batman, you know, like I feel like he'd have to, maybe he's in Arkham for like 20 more years, you know,
Joaquin Phoenix,
and then he breaks out and he's like, you know, a 60-70-year-old Joker. But you know, even if we never get another movie of Joker, and I feel like we're inevitably going to get one, but like even if we never get more of that story, it's fine. Like,
I mean, I hope we don't. I don't think we should. I think
I don't think so either.
Any sequel to the Joker film would be a disservice.
It'll pale in comparison to the first one anyway, because they've told the story they needed to tell. I don't know what more you can tell in there unless you pit him against a new Batman. But
I think he
doesn't need to have Batman.
It's more than just like, you know, being worse than the first one. I think it'll do a disservice to the first one. I mean, I think it'll bring the first one down in a similar way to, well, you know, we'll save that for later. We'll save that topic for later. But
okay, suspense,
mystery. In a similar way to another really important work of fiction that we're going to talk about later in the show, and how the ending of that really kind of did a disservice to the rest of it.
Oh,
yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
We'll get into that.
Oh, we'll get into that. All right.
But yeah, that's Joker. So that's sort of how I feel about it.
Yeah.
Did you have any other thoughts on it?
I agree with really, I think pretty much everything you said.
Wow, we're agreeing. Wow.
Yes, we are. Well, we don't always disagree.
That's true.
Okay?
That's true.
We
that's
just,
true.
we harp on different nuances, and we have our own different.
Yeah, I mean, we're
sticking points,
similar enough that, like,
Yeah.
The people out there who actually disagree are the ones we should have on the show.
Yes, and that's why, like, guys, send us your hate mail, because disagreement encourages discourse. Right?
I mean, I don't feast off of my own like insecurities or anything, So like, definitely send me all of your hate mail,
Yeah.
please. I want it.
Definitely tell him he's a dumb fuck, because
That's like my favorite thing to
he
hear.
needs to be leveled like that.
I do.
He does. Okay, so I think we pretty much said everything we need to say about Joker for now.
For now, to be continued.
To be
Dun,
continued,
dun,
for
dun.
sure. So, first movie that we have on the itinerary here that only one of us has seen is Doctor Sleep.
Oh,
Now,
I didn't see
okay,
that shit.
I really, really, really liked Doctor Sleep. And granted, going in, I had an inherent bias to like it as a result of being a big Kubrick fan, big fan of the original Shining, a Stephen King fan, and also a fan of, I'm blanking on his name right now, but the director of The Haunting of Hill House, who directed Doctor Sleep, and also being a fan of Ewan McGregor. Like, I just, going in, I had a lot.
You were just like, this movie's going to be good, even if it's
It was,
bad,
and it was, and it was everything I wanted it to be. It was like simultaneously in the style of the director. It's very similar in a lot of ways, aesthetically, and in terms of its overall vibe to Haunting of Hill House, but it's also kind of bringing in a lot of the Kubrick Shining stuff. But then it also incorporates a lot of the elements of Stephen King's book, The Shining.
Yeah.
And, and in the way that, like, because there was a Doctor Sleep book too that was a sequel to The Shining book. And obviously, like, Stephen King's opinion on the original Shining is legendary,
he hates
and its
that.
negativity, right? And so in the original Shining book, the hotel burns down, and it doesn't in the movie. So, like, the original Doctor Sleep story kind of has to reckon with that in a way where, like, in the movie is actually a sequel to the movie, but it also still has all these elements of King's Doctor Sleep book. So it's like this weird amalgamation of all these different things, but I think it pulls it off really well. I think it's a really engaging movie, and Ewan McGregor just absolutely knocks it out of the park.
I think you're probably wrong, but I haven't seen the movie.
I feel like Ben's probably not going to like this movie. Like, not just to be like, not just because he's Ben and, Ben hates everything, but like, I feel like,
funny.
no, I feel like you're probably not going to like hate it, but I feel like you're definitely not going to be nearly as positive on it as I am.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch it. It's on my list. It's been something that I've been meaning to get to, but I've had a lot of other films that I wanted to get to first. This last year or so has been kind of a weird one for me in movies, because Joker was really the last film I got to see in theaters. And I've been incredibly busy with a lot of really awesome projects, a lot of really not so awesome work related stuff. But I've missed out on a lot of the big movies when they came out. So I've been kind of on the backlog.
Well, it's okay, because there's some movies that I missed out on too, that you didn't.
That I didn't. Yeah, that's true.
Such as Parasite.
Yeah.
Parasite.
So
Ben, tell us about Parasite.
So, like, honestly, I love Bong Joon-ho. I mean,
Snowpiercer, amazing.
Snowpiercer, Okja. I mean, like, he's an incredible director. I think it's been way too long. It took way too long for him to get recognized for that, at least in the Academy. I think that Parasite itself is a really, really interesting movie. I'm not going to go into too much depth on spoilers. It seems to be one of those movies that, while it won Best Picture, I think a lot of people still have not watched it. At least in my circles that I'm running in, even my fans who are huge film fans just haven't gotten to it yet.
Well, it's like the foreign language having to read subtitles thing.
That's exactly what it is. And
what it is.
Bong Joon-ho is not a super world famous director. I mean, he is really well beloved in certain circles, but he's not like a super well known name like a Stanley Kubrick, or more contemporary times like a Wes
Chris
Anderson
Nolan
or a Christopher Nolan. Yeah. He's definitely more niche. And I think a lot of that is because he does a lot of that Korean language stuff. And I think that, we all know that the film world is not the most diverse and not the most accepting of people who are not white or Jewish or old. Yeah.
Ooh, Ben with the hot take.
I'm just saying.
You're just telling
like,
hey, man.
If I could have one thing, it would be better representation of Latin Americans in media. But maybe that's because I'm Latin American.
That's valid.
I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah.
that aside, Parasite, really incredible, really interesting story about like class warfare and humanity and people and.
How relevant is it to the world now, given that we've like had a pandemic?
It's not like the parasite is not a disease.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Because I didn't know if it was like a metaphorical parasite or a literal one. Okay.
To not spoil too much,
right.
The parasite are like these super poor people who like are feeding off of like
that's much more interesting
family.
than I was thinking it might be. So that's good.
Yeah, no, it's about a bunch of like poor people who are like basically plugging themselves into all of the like help jobs of this like super wealthy family. So like it all starts off with like the son becomes the tutor of this rich like family's oldest daughter, and then like they get the job of father as they're the father a job as the like the limo driver, and like basically they're getting all of the existing help fired so that they can replace them with members of their family.
Oh, and they're kind of slowly taking this family over.
They're slowly taking the family over.
Sense.
Yeah. But there's like so much other shit that goes on.
Yeah.
Like there's a fucking bunker in the house that the family doesn't know about that there's like another family living in. And like it ends up in this like crazy. Yeah. I don't want to spoil it for you guys. It's a really interesting movie. It's definitely got that like mind-bending, thought-provoking thing that all of Bong Joon-ho's movies tend to have. And I think it was wholeheartedly different. And I think that's one of the reasons why it did so well.
Yeah.
So you should all watch it. I definitely liked it.
There are two other movies that I know that only you've seen that I know you wanted to talk about. So I want to get to those. Yeah, for sure. There's The Platform is one of them.
Yeah. So that's a really great segue because The Platform is basically like a Spanish language ripoff of Snowpiercer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it is in a lot of ways. It's not like identical, but there are
like one of those, petri dish of society kind of.
Kind of, yeah, absolutely.
Like microcosm.
Yes, no, absolutely. Okay, so like I don't care as much about spoiling this one. I know a lot of you guys probably don't care about as much about it either. I'm not going to go into too much depth about spoilers, but to basically put like a context to the film, Platform is a movie about this weird alternate future, like super fascist version of Spain, where the government has a prison, which is essentially a giant like elevator shaft. And there are a bunch of levels and they're all numbered. And there's a floating platform that starts at the top of this elevator shaft covered in food. And it goes down the shaft. And that's the only food for people in this prison. And by the time it gets to the bottom, there's no food left. And every month, the inmates of this prison thing go to a random floor of this shaft. And it's all about like what that does to people. And like basically it's really unclear at the beginning of the film how many levels there are. There are at least like 160, and everything past like the 40th or 50th level, there's no food left. And you have to be in that cell for a month. So if you're in floor like 98, you got to eat something.
Yeah.
You might be able to get through 1 month without eating. But if you get 2 low floors in a row, well, you've got one cellmate.
Yeah.
And I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah. Okay.
So the film is pretty wild. You should watch it. It's really interesting. There's a lot of crazy things. Like there are people who are there because they committed crimes. And then there are people like the main character who are there because they chose to be there. He says that, the government promised him an accredited degree if he'd spent 6 months in the shaft. Also every inmate can bring one thing from the outside world of their choosing. So the main character brings a copy of Don Quixote. His cellmate brings a self-sharpening like chef's knife. So I'm just going to leave you guys with that.
You leave
I'm
it
not
at
going to
that.
go into too much more. But you should watch The Platform. I think, TJ, I think you would really appreciate it. Maybe if you didn't love it.
It definitely
I think
sounds
you
like it's right up my alley for sure.
It is 100% right up your alley.
Yeah.
And that's something that all of you guys out there watch it and like just it'll blow your mind. If Snowpiercer blew your mind, this movie will blow your mind too.
All right. Yeah. Snowpiercer blew my mind. So you sold me.
Yeah.
So how about Ford v Ferrari?
Ford v Ferrari, that's the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually watched that for the first time literally like 3 nights ago. So this one's still fresh.
And what did you think of it, Ben? Because I know you're pretty hit and miss, mostly miss on sports movies.
So it's, you know,
as much as this is a quote unquote
there are
sports
a
movie,
handful. There are a handful of sports movies out there and sports format movies that I think are really like they really hit the nail on the head. But any movie that's like done over and over and over again in like the same formula gets old for me really quickly. Ford v Ferrari is not a sports movie in that way. Mm-hmm. It is about a sport. It is not a sports movie. I think that I was really blown away by the film. It was much better than I was expecting it to be. I only watched it because I had a lot of friends at work who were talking about how incredible it was. I will say it made me want to watch racing. I think there were some cheap tricks. I didn't think the cinematography was anything like mind blowing. There were definitely moments where I thought it was really cool.
How about the like underdog story to it?
The underdog story, yeah, that is a really big part of it, and I think that they do that really well. Because it is a story about how 2 guys took Ford Motor Company when it was about to fail, and they beat Enzo Ferrari and his handmade supercars that were the most famous cars in the world with like this monster of a Ford GT40. And like, I thought that was really interesting. I am a guy who really loves working with my hands and mechanics. And I think that I could really have easily been a car guy if it weren't for the fact that when I was growing up, like every 12-year-old boy had Lamborghini posters on their wall, and I was not like every 12-year-old boy. So like, that kind of put me off to that whole culture.
Yeah.
Like bikini babes and Lamborghinis is not my thing. But now as an adult, I'm looking back on it and like Lancia Stratos is like one of the coolest cars ever made. And that's like totally the kind of car that would be on a poster for a 12-year-old.
Oh yeah.
You know? Yeah. So like, you know, Ford GT versus the Ferrari cars. I mean, I thought it was really cool. I thought it was a really interesting movie. It's really character driven, and that's what makes it so great. The acting, I thought it was good. It kept me entertained.
I mean, Christian Bale is always going to bring it. He's another one of those actors
absolutely.
like a Jake Gyllenhaal type, where like you're always going to get something good out of that guy.
Yeah, and he like Jake Gyllenhaal is a chameleon. I mean, he can play a lot of different types of roles. Yeah, and he usually plays them pretty well. And I think that this is no different. Ford v Ferrari was a pretty fun ride. I do think there's this one scene, the cinematography just like was really surprising to me. It's really early on in the film, and the movie is essentially about the 24-hour of Le Mans. Anyway, Le Mans, I'm pretty sure, because Le Mans is the pregnant yoga thing. Anyway, it's a race where you have to be racing for 24 hours. Like your car goes for 24 hours straight. And like in the beginning of it, this driver is describing how like in the middle of the night, you've been driving for hours at like 200 miles an hour, and like everything just kind of blurs together, and like you like lose track of yourself and time and like what's happening. And there was this shot of like, it's like dark, and I'm sorry, I'm pulling away from the mic a little bit. It's like dark, and there's like, you see like the headlights of the car, and it's like raining, and the like road is like sort of winding, and it's like it's disorienting. Like you're watching it, and like and I think they do a really good job of visualizing how the drivers feel, or at least how they describe themselves feeling, and that was one of the really amazing things about that film that like kind of got me hooked.
Does it have your recommendation then?
It's definitely a recommendation.
Our listeners should go see it.
I was not expecting to turn it on and not want to turn it off. To put it in perspective, it was the night that Ghosts of Tsushima came out that I decided to watch it. And I was like, I'm probably not going to finish it because I'm probably not going to like it. So I think I was waiting for the midnight release. I had the next day, 2 days off. And I was going to play the game at midnight. and I started watching Ford v Ferrari at like 10:30, and it's like a 2.5 hour movie or close to that. So like it was going past when I was going to start playing the game. And I decided to wait to play Ghosts of Tsushima to finish Ford v Ferrari because I liked it that much.
All right,
that's
high
much
praise
into the movie at the time. So at the very least, it was really entertaining. At the time, I wasn't expecting to do a critical analysis of it, so I didn't think too deeply into it. But I did really like it.
So you really liked that movie?
I did really like that movie.
I feel like that's one of those. It's probably one of those more obvious, like critical darling type movies. But I'll give you one that's even more obvious.
Oh, exciting.
The like groundbreaking, unprecedented spectacle that was 1917.
Oh my God.
What the hell is that movie?
That movie was nuts.
Crazy.
Yo, I could not
Crazy.
handle that movie when I watched it. Like that left me emotionally.
Did you see it in the theater?
No, I watched it on my OLED television, which was
okay. That's pretty close.
Great.
Yeah.
I wish I could have seen it in the theater.
It's
but
crazy in the theater. But it was probably pretty good on your TV too, though. You have a nice TV.
Oh yeah, it was something.
Yeah.
For those of you guys out there, I work in an electronics store, and I like to think I know a little bit about televisions. I have like one of the better televisions you can get. My TV will display a better picture than most like of the lower budget film projectors from a movie theater. So while I didn't get the awesome theater surround sound, which is a totally important part of cinema watching, my picture was definitely better than what most people saw 1917 in. And let me just say, I that was another film that I was on the fence about. It felt to me like it was trying to like ride the coattails of the World War I trend that we had a couple years ago for the 100-year anniversary of World War I.
Oh, there's our buddy, the dog again.
Yeah, that bastard.
That bastard.
Yeah, fucking bastard. So I'm a big history buff, as I'm sure you know. World War I is something that I'm incredibly like super into.
Yeah.
A lot of people are like, World War II is like a really popular, like, you know, young boy history topic. But
it was for me when I was younger, but over the last few years, I've gotten so much more into World War I.
Yeah, same here. And like I have a special connection. Like my great grandfather was a tank commander in World War II. So like there is part of World War II that is still really gripping for me. And I think that's the reason why it is for a lot of people, because they had family members that they remember or that their parents remember that were actually in the war. Whereas World War I is still a little bit too old.
Yeah.
For us.
Maybe not so much in like Europe. It's probably a lot more. It's probably still a lot more fresh there.
I mean, I could
considering
see
that like that's what got decimated.
That's a good point.
You know, but at least here in America, yeah, I would agree. It's World War II is more relevant these days than
and I think World War II is more relevant to modern geopolitics than World War I is. So I think that World War I, you know, is relegated to people who are more like history nerds. That being said, there was a lot of really interesting World War I content that came, like Dunkirk, for instance. Well, that was World War I, right? That was World War II.
Yeah, that was World War II.
That was World War II. Anyway, there was a lot of really interesting World War I stuff. There was the Great War, which was a YouTube channel that ran like a week by week of what happened 100 years ago during World War I, and that was a pretty interesting YouTube channel that I was really into. I watch a channel called See an Arsenal, which is all about like the weaponry from World War I, all the mechanics of the machine guns and the histories of how they were made and stuff like that, which I think is really fascinating because World War I is the beginning of mechanized warfare. It's also the beginning of like industrialized warfare. And, you know, I don't know. I find it fascinating. When 1917 was announced, it felt to me like it was just trying to ride that bandwagon. Right. And I was like, is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? I don't really know, but I'll watch it and we'll see. And I ended up really, really loving it. I mean, for one thing, it does the Birdman like single take for an entire movie. Yeah. And obviously it's not a single take.
No, there's a few moments where it's obvious.
Yeah. I think the one that comes to mind is there's a scene where they're going over a trench, like,
yeah, that's a big one.
And it's
so
like
is the explosion.
Very clear that it's like a cut. And when he gets shot in the bell tower, I think that's like a really
well, because that's like the only time the movie actually even has like a time jump too.
Yeah, that's true. That aside, like that movie, the way that they shot that, the cinematography, the choice to do like a smooth take, giant long shot of the well, I guess not really long shot, but a long time wise shot of for the entire film lends itself really well to the fucking anxiety that is induced from like crossing the trenches. And like the movie is kind of like a Saving Private Ryan style plot where it's like they have to go behind enemy borders to like discover MacGuffin for the rest of the
it's definitely like a travel story.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, and it is really like it's really intense. It's a really intense movie, and I think a lot of that is because of the way it's shot. I think most people don't realize how much cinematography affects the emotion of a scene in a film, and when you have those really long, drawn out takes, it starts to put you on edge. And it's a really, really old and classic film technique, dating back to like the 50s of like just drawing stuff out, making it a little bit suspenseful. You're waiting for that fast cut, because in action movies, it's all bam, 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 cut. In a movie like this, it
makes you anticipate it.
Yeah, it makes you anticipate it. And in a movie like this, there's a lot of action, but like it's all happening in front of you slowly on this like really long take. And I think that it puts you right there. I mean, it is a really immersive film.
You feel like you're walking with them. It feels like you are seeing it through like your eyes as you are walking with these guys going through the hell they're going through.
Yeah. I mean, people are getting shot and explosions are happening. Yeah. It feels like you're...
And like the scene when the airplane is coming down.
Yeah. Oh my God. That was super
exhilarating.
Intense. And then like...
What happens right after that?
What happens right after that is even more so. Yeah.
Which is brutal.
Or when they're in the bunkers and they hit the booby traps.
Yeah.
The
rat bag,
the fucking gore rat bag falls on the booby trap. It's just like that whole movie is an excellent watch. It definitely feels in some ways like bait for an award. Like they were trying really hard to try and get like a cinematography award.
They just executed on everything so well.
Yeah,
like honestly, okay, even if they were baiting for an award, they deserve it.
Yeah,
they deserve every award they got.
And I think that like there's some validity in like making a movie really artistic, trying to prove that you're worthy of like the best cinematography, right? I think like making something really different, really artistic with that end in mind is not a bad thing. And I think that like, you know, it feels like, oh, well, they're just trying to get an award and it's pretentious. But like, yeah, I mean, if it works, if they get the award,
it works,
it's because they did something really cool, you know? I think that I feel the same way about The Revenant, which is like one of my older, like one of my favorite movies that was clearly like bait for a cinematography award. Like that's what they,
and also wanted. For Leo, like he was still on like his hunt.
His hunt for his Oscar.
Yeah.
And that movie was totally like, for that, like it was definitely not like a broad audience film. It was an film for critics.
It was an Academy film.
It was an Academy film.
Yeah,
but those are really great. Like I think that, you know, if you're the kind of person who really loves Marvel movies, that's fine. I'm the kind of person that really loves like those super cerebral Academy films, and I think that I can watch both of them and have a really good time, but I can't watch one of them all the time and be satisfied.
Right.
You know, sometimes I gotta watch like Scott Pilgrim versus the World. So I can't always be watching like.
Sometimes you gotta unplug from the mainstream and
something that and just do something that's fun.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the time the other way around is what makes those fun movies fun. Like being able to watch something that's really cerebral and really intense makes watching those fun, lighthearted movies that much better.
Yeah, because it's such a counter programming that it kind of cleanses your palate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And you can unwind. Like one of the things I like to do a lot is I'll watch those like really intense types of movies like right before I go to bed, and then I'll watch like a couple of episodes of like animation. You know, like Kipo and the Age of the Wonder Beast is like I think a phenomenal show. It's on Netflix. If you're a fan of like animation, like Adventure Time style animation. It's not animated like Adventure Time, but like that sort of like young adult, kids, family friendly type, adventure story.
It lightens the mood for you.
It does. And it puts me in a good mood to go to sleep. Like if I watch a movie like 1917 and I try to go to sleep, I wake up super depressed.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Because I'm just emotionally drained.
Or you can't sleep because you can't stop thinking about it. Like that's happened to me a lot of times
that's
too.
another thing
You know,
that
like I just
happens to
need
me.
mindless shit, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, like in the animations I watch tend not to be mindless per
No,
se,
but they're not so like heavy. They're as
right,
like something
right.
like
I think
that.
the topics that they deal with are generally a little bit more lighthearted and a little bit more like uplifting. Whereas even like a Ford v Ferrari, like it's kind of like a heavy film in some ways, and it's like you finish it, and if you finish a movie kind of like, wow, you know, that's not the mood I want to be in before I go to sleep. I want to be in like, I'd be like, oh, that was fun. That's how I want to be before I go to sleep. Like, oh, I'm glad I watched that. You know, not damn, that was heavy.
Right. Yeah. No, I feel
man.
that. I feel that. All right, so enough on movies. We need to get into some TV shows because there's a lot of TV shows we missed. Yeah, we're at an hour 25, Ben. We gotta bang through this.
Yeah, we do.
So this next one, there's no better TV show to start with, and I think hopefully we can try to get through this quickly because there's so much to talk about. But
wonderful.
Yeah, we can't in 2020.
What's the show
about?
TJ.
TV shows and not talk about the fucking Tiger King.
Oh my God. Hello, all you cool cats and kittens.
Hey, you cool cats and kittens.
Yeah. So I have a really great Tiger King story.
Oh, yes. Tell me your great Tiger King story.
So Tiger King came out shortly after I went on paid leave because of the coronavirus. I'm pretty sure it was like the first week I was out on paid leave.
I think that's the case for like a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, it was right. I think it came out right in that sort of like time frame. When the virus just started becoming serious in the US, or at least taken seriously by people in the US. I guess it was pretty serious before that. But,
well, yeah.
You know, we have a bit of a leadership problem here in the States.
We do.
That aside, so, you know, I was in this sort of rut. You know, everybody was super filled with anxiety and concerned about the future, whether I was going to have a job in 2 weeks, whether I was going to be able to pay my bills and that sort of thing. So I was sort of doing the like depression Netflix slog where it was just like watching whatever was on Netflix, like shit that was in my queue, shit that was popping up new, whatever I could just watch. And I don't remember specifically what I was doing. Oh, I was playing Animal Crossing. Yeah, that was also the time. It was right after Animal Crossing came out. And that was like the thing that was keeping me and a lot of my coworkers sane, is like the really like wholesome environment that is Animal Crossing New Horizons.
It's exactly what you're talking about before. It's like using like lighthearted stuff to kind of not think about heavy shit.
Right, exactly. It totally escapism there. And I was like, I gotta put something in the background on the TV while I play Animal Crossing, because Animal Crossing is a pretty quiet game, and I have this like thing where if I'm devoting my attention to something like media related, I can't be in like utter silence, or else I feel super, super alone. So I tend to put on like a documentary or something in the background that I don't really care about, but that I can like kind of glance at and like, you know, pick up nuggets of interest whenever I'm like bored of something that's happening in the game. So, you know, that day, in the new tab on Netflix, the very first thing that was there was this movie or documentary called The Tiger King. And I was like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah,
and
it's
it
just
shows
Joe
this guy with a
motherfucker,
huge handlebar mustache and giant earrings. I'm like, oh, this is probably like mildly interesting. So I'll put it on in the background. Like I'm not super attached to it or what it's going to be about. Like I'm not worried about that. So I put it on. But I think about like 20 minutes in to the first episode, I'd already turned my Nintendo Switch off. It was like on the next table.
You're like, this needs my full attention.
And I was just like,
now.
What the fuck is happening? And I think like at the end of the second episode, I had like opened the door to my bedroom. At the time I lived with 5 other people, and I was like yelling down the hallway, like, she fucking fed her husband to an alligator. You have to watch this documentary.
Tiger Benjamin.
Yeah, it was really funny.
That is really like Tiger King in a nutshell, is like, this is fucking crazy.
Yeah, and nobody
then-
knew yet.
And
because
you're
it was the
like,
day it came out.
this can't possibly get any crazier. Every episode, you're
Yeah.
like, okay, fine. You know what? This is the peak. And the next episode,
No,
it's
it
like,
just gets so
that's
much
funny.
more
Hold my
crazy.
beer. And then
Yeah,
like, you're like,
absolutely.
okay, now it can't get any crazier. I know I said before it couldn't, but now it definitely can't. And the next episode, it's like, fuck you. Yes, it can.
like-
and then you're like, okay, fine. This is the peak. And the next episode, and so on and so forth, dude, all the way to the end, it just keeps
And you're
getting
just like,
fucking
what
crazier. You're
the
like, how
fuck?
is this
Like, he's
real?
running for president now.
Yeah.
Like, what the
How
fuck?
is this real? And
Yeah.
then the dude shoots himself.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
like, how
he's
is
like
this real?
He's like sex slave husband.
Yeah.
like shoots himself
and then
in the
he
head.
and then he proceeds to invite the sex slave husband's
mom
mother
to his next wedding for. Oh my god.
Yeah.
That show is crazy.
Then he goes to prison for a murder for hire scheme.
Yeah.
like
Yeah, 'cause
on
he
the
tries to
woman
kill Carol
who
Baskin.
possibly maybe fed her
That
first
bitch.
husband to a tiger.
That bitch Carol Baskin. So like
It's just crazy. It's so there's so many layers to
it was really great because
yeah.
I must have watched it within a few hours of it being uploaded
Yeah.
on Netflix because it wasn't there the day before. It wasn't there that night when I went to bed, and it was there that next morning when I started watching stuff on Netflix with my Animal Crossing. So I was one of the very first wave of people to see that documentary, which is something I'm very proud of because
because it blew up pretty
two
hard.
or 3 days later.
Yeah.
It was like all over Facebook, and like a few days after that, it was on like the Today Show. Like they were talking about it on like NBC. Like my mom was
Dude,
like, "Have you seen this Tiger King show?" And I was like, "Oh yes, I have."
Dude, it got all the way up to the president. Like I remember,
Yeah.
like President Trump was like discussing the possibility of pardoning Joe Exotic. Like that's how big this shit got.
Why would you pardon that monster of a human being?
You know, that's
Yeah,
not the right question to be asking. Honestly,
I'll never get over his fucking dick padlocks. I think that's like a memory burned into my brain. Like those things were fucking big, man. The hole in his dick must be pretty fucking big.
Yeah.
Sorry guys, I'm putting that image in your head.
No, I mean, look, man. Honestly, probably most of the people listening have seen it. It's nuts.
Yeah,
It's nuts. And if you haven't, I'm sorry that we spoiled like a lot of stuff. But honestly, if you've been if you've been in the world and not under a rock, you've heard, like, you've seen Carol Baskin memes. You've seen like the feed my husband to a tiger things. You've seen a lot of it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like, I think at this point, a lot of the people out there who haven't seen it are those people who are like, I'm not going to watch.
They're
Game of
just
Thrones
not going to
because
watch.
Everybody
it on,
watches
like,
Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
And I know a lot of people who are like that.
Whenever something gets popular, there's always going to be like, especially when it like really blows up like viral like that. There's always going to be like that contingency of people who are like, I'm not going to be like everybody else. I'm not watching it, or like that's dumb. It's
I have a lot of friends who are.
I'm more
who have
intellectual than that, and it's like. You
I don't even think it's an
man,
intellectual
this shit
thing.
is fucking
like,
nuts.
I have a lot of friends who are just like, the more you tell me to watch something, the like less I'm likely to watch it.
I have friends like that too.
And it's like, just watch it because you're
stop being stubborn.
Yeah, it's just,
you're the only one missing out right now.
Yeah, right. You're like shooting yourself in the foot by not doing it. I mean, like the reason why it's super viral is because it's super good. I mean, sometimes things go viral that are bad. I mean, if you guys are out there, you have Netflix. I'm sure you've seen the top 10 Netflix scale that they added. And it's almost always like the worst content in the world.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring it up.
Except when The Office is on there. Because The Office has been number one. I've seen it like quite a few times now where I pop in. I'm like, oh, look, The Office is a number one again.
Yeah. I mean, the last few times I've been on, it's been like some pretty terrible content. Like there's that new show that's like a young adult, like Cursed or whatever, which I watched like 5 minutes of and turned off. And like, don't come at me, guys. I know that like some people really care about that because it's like a book series. I couldn't get into the show. And then there's like that reality show about hot people or something that was like number one for like a week. I just dumb reality Jersey Shore ripoffs are not my thing.
But you know what though? One of the shows that was in that top 10 that was actually really, really good, at least in my opinion, as a huge fan of The Office and Steve Carell, was the Netflix original Space Force.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So you really liked Space Force?
I love Space Force.
I think Space Force is like a solid like 6 out of 10.
I mean, that's positive, right? That's technically a positive
better
review.
than half. I mean, like, I think Space Force, some of the episodes are incredible.
Just Ben Schwartz alone.
John Malkovich is
and
like
John Malkovich
a fucking
so shows up to that show.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he is what, for me, John Malkovich is what makes that show.
It's well, I mean, yeah,
You can put everybody
I would have
else
to agree with
aside.
that.
That show is what it is. Like the best parts of that show are because of.
But
him.
it's like it's his dynamic with Steve Carell.
Yeah,
like
for
like
sure.
there's almost like it's like Steve Carell kind of spites him, even though he's right, in a similar way to how he does Michael Scott with Toby.
Yeah,
you know,
I think it's an interesting, like, you can't escape the comparison of the Michael Scott to
because he's doing like a more like just a
it's an
one notch
intellectual
more
version.
intellectual Michael Scott.
Yeah, for
you
sure.
know,
a buffoon. He's playing a buffoon. He's playing a smarter buffoon,
but
a buffoon.
it's kind of the perfect time to like make something like this. Like this show wouldn't have made sense in, say, not to get too political about it, but like the Obama administration, right?
Well, I mean,
like
the show constantly is
like, oh, hold on, we need to get ahead of it. POTUS is going to tweet this in 15 minutes.
So for those of you who don't know, Space Force is literally an excuse to make fun of President Trump.
Yeah,
like there is no other reason that show.
No, it's
exists.
like constant,
and they do a really good job of that. And there are some episodes that really, really nail it. Like episode 2 with the monkey and the dog in space and the Chinese satellite that comes and like that's a really, really
and the dog's
funny
tail
episode.
is just floating. Oh, the monkey ate the dog.
Yeah. It's a really funny, really, really funny episode. And I think the jokes in that episode really land.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the episodes that follow that for the rest of the series for me didn't cut it. They fell offbeat. Some of them just weren't funny. Some of them were really funny. I mean, there was like I remember
what's like the one with the like
Trump.
court hearing is really good.
Oh, see, and I feel the exact opposite.
You don't
I
like
think
that
the
one?
court hearing. I think that's like they tried to be like politically centrist by making fun of like
AOC.
Yeah, and I just like it didn't feel genuine to me. It didn't feel funny. It didn't feel
I liked it. I liked it for mostly for the development of Steve Carell's character. Like I liked it for, you know, like him really starting to have confidence in himself and
that's
like
also
tell the Air
moment
Force
where
guy
he
where to stick
accepts
it.
John Malkovich as his partner, which he doesn't do through the rest of the series. I think for plot points it's important, but I just didn't think it was funny. I didn't think it was a funny joke to make.
Well, you know what's funny was the whole episode where Steve Carell has to go into the artificial moon. Like the artificial moon base with the other guys.
It's just like how annoying is Steve Carell's character in this show kind of episode. But
also like that one like just the characters that are in there, like the one artsy guy, who like makes penis sculptures,
dick sculptures,
but he's actually like the most like level-headed, compassionate one there.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know, man. Like I think it's not bad. I just didn't think it really.
It sold me on Ben Schwartz. I'll tell you what, because and then not that I didn't like him before, but I just all I really knew him from before that was like voicing Sonic.
Have you seen Middleton and Schwartz?
Yes. No, yeah, we talked about that.
Oh, yeah.
Because like after I saw that, I was like, yo, Fuck Tony was so funny. And you were like, dude, you got to see Middleditch and Schwartz.
All right. So
and I saw Middleditch and Schwartz, and that was like
that's
the greatest 3 hours I've probably ever spent in my life.
All right, so guys, we didn't put it on a list to talk about because it totally escaped us because it's stand-up comedy. But Middleditch and Schwartz. I'm sorry, I can't talk today.
Yeah.
Middleditch and Schwartz is
it's kind of a tongue twister. It's okay.
It is.
I can't really say it either.
It's improv comedy. And I know that all of you probably just like we're like, oh, improv comedy.
Listen, I'm not a big fan of like most improv either. But like it's just just trust us. It's so funny.
Long. Yeah,
it's so funny.
It is fundamentally the same structure as like the improv shows that you might have went to if you went to college. We had an improv troupe in my school. Most schools do. And it is the same like format. It's like they ask the crowd for a theme and then they do improv off of that theme. But they take it to like 8 more levels higher.
And it's just the two of them too. And like the two of them will play like 50 characters over the course of the next hour. Yeah. And they'll make one crazy twist after another. Like to the point where they almost start to lose it, but they never do. And that's like the best part. It's really funny.
You have to watch it to understand. You have to watch it to understand. And that's what I was gonna say. While we're still on the topic of stand-up comedy, I will say I watched Eric Andre's new stand-up the other day. You're gonna love it.
Yeah, I love Eric Andre. So
yeah, it was really ballsy. Literally and figuratively. There are literal balls in that episode.
Bird up.
But anyway, that aside, what were we talking about?
Space Force.
So
which,
6 out of 10.
I think I'm also kind of just a sucker for seeing Steve Carell do a Michael Scott like character again.
Yeah, I mean, I love Steve Carell,
fan of him and of The Office and of Michael Scott, because like the worst thing that ever happened in The Office was like losing Steve Carell.
Yeah,
you know, it's just not the same after that, because
No, I
he's
agree.
just such a
He-
presence,
he
such a
was
character.
one of the most important parts of that show.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. Space Force is, like I said, 6 out of 10 for me.
yeah, fair enough. I'd give it like an 8.5, I guess.
Well, that's
But,
pretty high praise.
But you know what I would give like a 9.5 or 10
What?
is Rick and Morty season 4.
Yeah, I don't know. I've only seen the first episode.
But you loved it, and you're
I
not
did.
usually a huge fan of Rick and Morty.
So I was just gonna say that, guys. I am normally lukewarm on Rick and Morty. I really liked the first season. I really didn't really like any of the rest of it. I especially didn't like the third season. I thought the third season was downright not funny. And like Pickle Rick is not a funny meme. I never got it. I didn't get it in the episode. I don't get it now. The fan base is incessantly annoying. As I'm sure you all
that's
remember
valid.
from the Szechuan sauce incident. But you know, I thought that at least the first episode of the fourth season that I saw was really interesting, and there was a lot of cool references. Like they referenced Akira like 4 times, which was one of my favorite movies of all time. For those of you who haven't seen it, Akira is an animated post like dystopian cyberpunk. You just got to watch it. It's an animated film. It's 90s Japanese
You're a
anime
big fan
in
of
its
the
prime.
Akira.
Yeah, no, and I think TJ, if you watched it, you'd probably like it too, even though you're not an anime guy.
Yeah.
Because
To an extent, an anime guy.
Yeah, I mean, you
Because
like
as
Dragon
I'm
Ball.
wearing a Dragon Ball Z
You like
shirt.
Dragon Ball Z, but like other than that, I know you're not like big into
Yeah, it's mostly
into
just
that
Dragon Ball Z.
genre. But you should watch Akira because it's like a good movie on its own. I actually like right next to me, I have a little speaker that I painted red and then designed in Illustrator a bunch of stickers from Akira's bike in the movie, or the Kaneda's bike from the movie Akira. There's a bunch of stickers. There's like a Canon sticker. I'm a lifelong Canon photographer. And it, it spoke to me. So I made a little speaker in the same design as the
So
bike
Rick
from
and
the
Morty
movie.
definitely hit you in the right spots when they were like,
Yeah, I think that
constantly
episode,
referencing
they were constantly we got an Akira situation going on here. I also thought it was really funny that like the whole episode it was Morty like just being so Morty, like like all he wants is to fuck Jessica, right? And I don't blame him. Like, like if I was in that animation style and I was Morty, like I'd want to fuck Jessica too. And then like he just takes that like thirst so extreme,
so much so that he denies it so that he can have it. She's like, hey, we're going skinny dipping.
Me and a couple of other
right
girls
now.
are going skinny dipping right now. You should come with us. No, I think we hook up in our 40s. And then he like leaves and like confused. And it's like, I don't want to spoil too much about that episode either. But like Morty is letting some like future prophecy thing guide him through his life so that he can end up with Jessica. And it's like totally backfiring on him the whole time.
The rest
and
of
you're
the
just, like,
season,
watching it happen.
in my humble opinion, is on that level. Like in terms of like the complexity of like the storytelling and a lot of like just the explorations of like really cerebral, high concept sci-fi shit.
Yeah. As soon as it makes it to HBO Max or Hulu, which is definitely going to be one of the 2 platforms it goes to, I would probably guess HBO Max because they got like all the Cartoon Network properties.
Yeah.
I'll watch it, but until then, I'm probably just going to have to wait it out.
Yeah. There's this one episode in particular later in the season that's like, like they're trying to go on a family vacation. I think that's what it is. They're going camping or something. And like, I forget exactly what it is, but it's not important because it's like the first like 30 seconds. And then Rick like basically gets contacted by this planet that he fucked and impregnated. And he has to go to the planet and like, it's like birthing all these like rock people that are like half Rick, half the planet.
That's really
and
weird.
like he decides to like along with Beth start this whole society of like these rock people so like they can like make a meaningful like society on this planet. And over the course of like several days they end up like he creates this entire society and he like he'll put like the undesirables he'll send them like down the tube and
Jesus Christ.
it goes crazy. And it's like this episode has like it's like every 10 seconds there's like an amazing joke. It's just, and then like a lot of the episodes are like that. And I don't, because Ben hasn't seen it, I don't want to go too much into the details, but Ben, once you're able to see it, highly recommend it. Everybody listening,
I'm not a big Rick and Morty fan, so it's not super high on my list, but as soon as it's available, I will 100%.
But you like
watch
Dan
it.
Harmon because you like Community.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
so like this goes back
story
to
style,
the
you know.
like I can like or dislike content from a director.
No,
Doesn't
of
necessarily mean
course.
I
But
like
what I'm
the-
saying is like the things that you like about Dan Harmon,
yeah,
those
for
community, you know, like his story circle kind of style of telling things.
for sure. But I also hate Harmon quests, so like
That's fair.
I don't love Dan Harmon.
No, but like what I'm saying is the things that like you do like about him, I think are really on point in this season. So that's a reason why I think, you know, could be worth it for you.
I can't agree with that because I haven't seen the season, but that jives with my idea of what the season is, so that makes sense to me.
But you did see a lot more of Solar Opposites than I did,
see Solar Opposites, which
no Dan Harmon at all. It's just Justin Roiland going crazy.
And I liked Solar Opposites almost more than I liked the last few seasons.
You liked it more than I did. I mean, I only saw the first like 2 episodes, but
I think it just gets better the more you watch it, to be honest with you. And it's very similar in a lot of ways to Rick and Morty. There's some like science fiction-y like playing around. Like there's a whole like society of people who are shrunk down by these children aliens and put into a giant hamster like thing in a wall, and they form like a Mad Max society, and there's like a whole like sub story about them that is like super interesting and funny, and there's lots of irony, and I think it's like really well done. And well
I enjoyed the jokes of the first couple episodes. So
as far as the humor goes, I think the humor is really good. It feels a lot more like lighthearted and a lot less weighty than like at least recent Rick and Morty has. Like recent Rick and Morty is like really heavily about how awful of a person Rick is, and how he's like depressed, and how like he's dragging everybody down with him. That
definitely continues.
Yeah, and that's not how Solar Opposites feels. Like Solar Opposites is very much like these weird aliens and like a sitcom environment where they're on Earth, and like they all have their quirky personalities that are conflicting with each other and the humans, and it's like a little bit more, I think, fun in a way. They're definitely playing with some dark themes, like the humans in the cage like thing. Like there's some fucking crazy dark shit that happens there.
Well, I think it's the second episode where they take like the girl and they shrink her. Yeah, that's cut open her head and they pour the soda inside on her brain. Yeah. That sort of stuff continues to happen throughout the series, and it like it's definitely as raunchy and as like sort of violent and that kind of dark humor as you get from Rick and Morty. It's just not so like depressing. Like Rick is kind of a depressing character, I think. He can be, because he's just such a like dick. Right, and the shitbags in Solar Opposites are a little bit like more relatable than the shitbags in Rick and Morty, I think. Yeah. I don't know. I had a really, I think, poignant way of describing Solar Opposites, and I completely lost it. Like I described it to a friend of mine who then watched it and then came back and was like, "You described it perfectly. Exactly how you described it is how I felt when I watched it." And I was like, "I wish I remembered how I described it then, so I described it that way now." But yeah, so that's Solar Opposites. Yeah. What's next on the docket? Well, we still have like a decent stretch of shows left. I was trying to condense it a little bit. We can run through the next ones quick. Yeah, because we're at an hour 48 now. Woo! So yeah, if we can wrap this up around like 2, that would be sick. Yeah. Okay, so we can try to bang through these quickly. So we have The Witcher. Yeah, I give it like 6.5 out of 10. I'd probably give it about a 7. Definitely not much more positive than you. A little bit more, but I'm really surprised. I would have expected you to be one of the like The Witcher was amazing type people. I was The Witcher was good. Yeah, that's how I felt. I definitely wasn't The Witcher was awful, terrible, I didn't think it was bad. I didn't think it was as good as like, the internet seemed to make it out to Henry Cavill is, he's probably the best cast I could have come up with for I think he does a great job of portraying Geralt of Rivia. I just don't know if I love that. But he's also kind of like cardboard. Like it's kind of cardboard. That's true, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it coming off the heels of like other high-end medieval drama shows that we've seen, it definitely, it had a high bar that it was kind of like inevitably going to be compared to. There are a lot of I'm just to put it atop on The Witcher. I think there are a lot of people out there who are fanboys for The Witcher because of The Witcher 3, and that's valid. CD Projekt Red is one of the best developers in the history of modern gaming, and The Witcher 3 is incredible. And
I could totally see wanting the Witcher TV show to also be incredible because of that, but I just don't think it really was. It was good and it was entertaining, and I watched all of it.
Then also my favorite thing in the entire season was your least favorite thing, which was the toss a coin to your Witcher, because it was so out of place. And I do agree it was out of place, but it was so good.
I mean, it's like they just threw a super catchy formulaic pop song into the middle of
they knew
the
what
show.
they were doing. They're like, this is gonna go viral. And it did.
They knew it was going to do one of two things. It was either going to be universally hated, or it was going to be universally this is amazing. And they were fortunate, and it was the latter. But even if it was the former, it would have still been a win for them, because people would have been online talking about The Witcher and the song that's in The Witcher. And, it was going to be a big thing regardless of whether it was a big good thing or a big bad thing. And I think they lucked out there, but I hated that song. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie.
Fair enough. So The Witcher. Okay.
So that's The Witcher.
Next thing is Stephen King's The Outsider.
The Outsider. I could talk a lot about The Outsider. That's a show where the cinematography and the mise en scène really lock it in for me.
Yeah.
As far as
Bateman
TV series go,
is amazing, and all the actors.
The
are
acting
in it.
all across the board is really hard to top.
The one actor, blanking on his name right now, who plays the cop who's really skeptical.
Oh my god, he's so
slowly
good.
Comes around over the course of the season. His whole arc is incredible. That actor,
everybody
is incredible in that role.
Is a really good. I mean, it feels like a Stephen King book, but it also feels like a cinematographic masterpiece in a lot of ways. I really loved. And it's really great at consistently consistently building a lot of tension in different ways, that entire standoff scariest
episode
show that I've ever watched that has almost no jump scares.
Yeah,
it is so
literally just that standoff
insane.
With the cars
at the
and the sniper.
series,
not to get into too much.
We're not going to
spoilers, but I know we're at the top of the show. We're going to spoil everything, but no, it's some stuff's better left to surprise for sure. If
you haven't seen The Outsider, go fucking watch it.
Go watch it.
You're doing yourself a disservice not doing that.
Yeah, top shelf HBO content.
Now, I will say it might not be for everybody. It's definitely,
but it's not a super controversial show either.
It's not controversial. I think that it's slow
burn.
It's very
Stephen King.
It's very Stephen King, but the direction of the production is very highbrow. So if you're not a fan of really cerebral and meaningful camera shots, it's not
I see what you mean.
It's not a really straightforward shot.
Just technique wise,
there's a lot of really unusual use of camera movement, and things are often out of focus in that show in a way that might be jarring for people who are used to watching Marvel movies.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the kind of content you come here to talk about or hear about, then The Outsider might not be for you. But you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't give it a try. So definitely at least watch the first episode. If you're not hooked by the end of the first episode, you might not get hooked. That being said, by the end of the second episode, stuff starts getting real wild.
Yeah, if you're not hooked by the end of the second episode, it's definitely not for you, because by that point you're on the ride.
Chill. That show has no chill.
Yeah.
So anyway, next up on the list,
is another top shelf HBO production, Watchmen. Such a relevant show in such a relevant time, and amazing how relevant it was, given that it wasn't produced obviously during this exact time, The
Watchmen, I'm going to say right now, The Watchmen is what a comic book adaptation should be, in my opinion. It is dark, it's gritty, it's serious, it's real,
and visceral.
It is, and it's funny,
and relevant.
It's funny when it's funny.
It has some really funny moments,
and I think that, and it's not funny the way that the MCU movies are funny, where it's a cheap gag. I mean, I think the humor in
a lot of it's payoffs on character relationships.
Yeah,
a lot of humor,
for sure. It's really witty. It's a really witty show. And as far as cinematography goes, that's another winner.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that show had some really baller.
There's this whole episode that's pretty much entirely in black and white.
Yeah,
because of some really crazy thing that happens in the plot.
And it's not and that's a thing that's been done before, right? Where shows will do an episode in black and white, and it's supposed to be an artistic choice.
Yeah.
Master of None and the Aziz Ansari show did that. And in those shows, I don't think any of them have done it as well as this one. This is the first show I've ever watched where that black and white episode was like, you know, it had me.
It wasn't just black and white for the sake of being black and white. Like, there's so many reasons why it was black and white.
So many
play
reasons,
into so many different thematic things.
And the themes of that show. I mean, talk about a contemporary,
right? That's what I'm saying.
Perfectly poignant.
So on the spot right now.
My God, like dealing with race and like authoritarianism and like masks. Oh my God, they had no idea what they were getting into with that show. I mean, that show is months ahead of its time.
And like the the whole question of the power of the police. Things like that.
And what kind of power should the police have? I think they play a really good job of showing a lot of different perspectives too, because very early on in the show, like I remember I had a little bit of a concern because in the first episode there's a scene where like there's a police officer and he pulls somebody over and he has to like call into the HQ to like access his gun, and it's done in this way that seems really like, you know, police shouldn't be demilitarized because it's, you know, that's just putting them in harm's way. Like that's sort of the undertone that you get in that scene, and like they throw that kind of undertone right out the window because that's not what it's about. That's not at all what it's about. That's not what that scene is about. That's not what the show is about. Like, and you don't realize that quite at first, but as you go on, I mean, it really quickly becomes a like, how do you manage people who don't have any accountability? Right. And that's what the police is in that show. And that's also in a lot of ways what the police is in modern day. Yeah. And considering that show came out before the George Floyd
that's what protests, I'm saying. Like it's way more relevant than they could have had any clue they were going to be.
Well, you know what I will say to that though is that, you know, when it comes to that police brutality issue, it's not new, and I'm sure that there are people on that.
But like the time that the show was airing was like just as like some of this stuff was starting to really over. Gear up.
Yeah, I think that the unrest has been boiling for a while. Yeah, and that show came out, and shortly thereafter, it really boiled over. One of the things that I thought was really clever about that show is the opening to the Tulsa Massacre, which has been erased from American history books. I didn't learn about the Tulsa Massacre when I was in high school. I didn't learn about it when I was in college. I learned about it now as an adult.
I learned about it watching this show.
Yes, a lot of people did. A lot of people did, and I knew about it before going into Watchmen. But it is a real part of American history, the Tulsa Massacre, where basically a bunch of white law enforcement officers, Klansmen, and rich people
pretty much butchered an entire town of black people.
Yeah, like almost basically there was a city, and the huge portion of the city was a very prosperous, very successful black community with like upper middle class black people who were functioning in society. They were the shining light of what a black community could be in America, and they were butchered.
Snuffed out.
Yeah, snuffed out. It was a massacre. I mean, it was a genocide in a lot of ways.
And that's like the initial like starting point of this story.
Yeah, that's what
like the foundation. So like
the fucking plot.
And then it all just builds from there.
And it works perfectly. It fits perfectly with like the existing Watchmen content.
Oh, they fit all the Watchmen stuff in there so well. Like especially all the stuff with Ozymandias, like all that wild stuff that like it somehow coexists perfectly in this really socio-political story as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, all the stuff like, you know,
it's incredible how they did that.
Like, you know, squids
and like the 70s and like the Vietnam War and like how that plays into things. Of course. And like, I mean, it's really an incredible.
Yeah, a lot of the Vietnamese stuff is pretty relevant too.
Yeah, it's all. I mean, I think they
Dr.
do a really
Manhattan, how that's all folded in. The romance, Dr. Manhattan.
And it pulls at the soul of what the Watchmen was originally supposed to be. I mean, it is an alternative DC Universe comic book that like kind of goes a different direction than anything else that's been written in comics. And I think that like they do a really fucking good job of capturing that that spirit, because it feels like it's a comic book show just as much as it feels like it's an artistic political statement. And there are very few films in that comic book genre that do that well. The only one that comes to mind is Black Panther, and even that has problems. So long story short, Watchmen, it is 100% a good watch. You should all go. Anytime TJ and I both agree on a movie that you should go watch, like go watch it. That's a pretty high praise.
That's true. because we do agree a decent amount, but it's.
I think part of the reason why we've agreed so much in this episode is because we were picking movies,
things that we
wanted to talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
And that inherently means that we're going to end up talking about a bunch of content that we really liked.
Yeah.
It's hard to talk about a movie that we both disliked because we wouldn't want to talk about it. Yeah,
unless it was like a new thing and we were like,
right, or if it was so bad it's worth talking, and everybody else thought it was good or something. But like, there's not really a whole lot of examples of anything like that right now. We could have talked about that Netflix action movie that was just like an extended car commercial with violence. Like I don't even remember.
Oh, something 6 or whatever, that one, the one with Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah,
Ryan
Reynolds movie. Yeah. I haven't seen.
I didn't even watch it.
I didn't. Yeah, that's funny. Neither of us have seen it. That would have been a good topic for a movie that we probably wouldn't have liked. Because I guess it's just like the condensed like. What's his name? Christian Bale or not?
Ryan Reynolds?
No, not Christian Bale. The Michael Bay. It's like a Michael.
Oh,
Bay film.
Okay.
Totally different people there.
Yeah. All three very different people.
Oh man, but yeah, the Michael Bay, like super action and nothing else. And like cokey, cheesy. That's how
it's like the opposite of like one of those 1917 movies, right? It's like what you're saying. It's like sometimes like it's only really enjoyable if it's like an intentional counter programming to something with like actual weight and
There's apparently like no weight to that whatsoever. It's just like mindless violence and cars. Kind of like the Fast and Furious movies, but at least those have like try to tie together some kind of like narrative.
And they have The Rock, and like when you have The Rock, that gets you a lot of leeway.
That's true. That's true.
Because he's great. So like
what's
no matter
next on the list though. Oh, I'm sorry. You had something to say
on the list.
No. You finished.
I was just saying The Rock. I'm just saying The Rock's great.
Yeah, The Rock is pretty great.
Your movie can go a long way just on Dwayne Johnson's star power.
That's true. That's true. What's next on the list, buddy?
We had a few more things on the list, but I'm gonna skip them out because we're a little over 2 hours now, and we got to talk about this thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ben hinted this earlier, and if you listened to the podcast before,
oh God,
you are probably expecting us to broach this subject because how could we not? Now, one of the last episodes, well, actually 2 of the last episodes that we did were involving this topic that we are both extremely passionate about.
Maybe you've guessed it already.
You've probably guessed it already. Guys, we gotta...
The greatest television show that's ever been made in the history of TV.
We gotta talk about Game of Thrones Season 8, guys.
Disappointing.
We gotta talk about it.
Have.
We gotta talk about it.
So, I'm jumping straight into it. I can't hold back anymore. The dam is broken. I do not hate the final season the same way that most people do, but it was not good.
No.
And I'm going to accept that. Like, I think that the first episode, right on par with the rest of the series.
The first like 3 episodes
really, are all really good.
It's like episode 4 that it like it starts taking a fucking...
It's once the Battle of Winterfell is over, you could really feel Benioff and Weiss fucking give up on that show.
Yeah.
You can feel it. You can feel it in how much they wanted it to be over. And they did some shit that I think was done. I think they assassinated Jamie Lannister's character.
That's the biggest defense.
I'm just going to ignore everything else. That's the thing we have to talk about.
For sure.
They assassinated him.
Yeah.
And like,
he had such a great arc, man.
And they ruined it.
Probably the best arc on television I'd ever seen up to that point. Something we talked about in our 2 episodes we did prior, like the fact that like, you know, Jamie went from this guy who was like fucking his sister and then like a minute later pushes a child out of a window, presumably to his death. By the end of
the season 7, you're like,
I love this guy.
I love him. He's great.
He's my hero.
He's the best. He's the best character in the show. He's the most morally aligned character in a show.
Yep.
And he's also the most human. And I think that like,
and then they just were like, nope.
They were just like, oh, you all like Jamie Lannister?
Yeah, he's gonna fucking chuck Brienne, and then he's gonna go back to Cersei.
For no reason.
Other than to like be zero payoff whatsoever, other than that him and Cersei get to die together, which like who cares?
They shouldn't die. Cersei should die alone.
Yeah.
Like
that would have been way more satisfying. If she died alone as a result of all of her scheming, you know, like she lost all of her children.
She brought it all upon herself.
Yeah.
And then Jamie Jamie died for no reason. Jamie had the perfect like his
Yeah, it's
character
dumb.
was finished. Brienne of Tarth's character was finished with her like fucking Jamie. Like she
Yep.
got the hottest dude that she could get, and she's a knight, and she's a badass empowered woman.
Yeah.
They just shat on her, and then they shat on Jamie.
And it also did a
And then
lot of
they-
that stuff. Like another thing that the show did, and this is like a good segue because it's related to that, is
Yeah.
that it did a similar thing to what Star Wars Episode 9 did, where like it didn't have the balls to like pull the trigger on a lot of characters. And it's like, guys,
yeah.
go for broke. It's the end.
Brienne of Tarth could have died.
She could have died in
and-
episode 3.
In episode 3,
She
I
had,
would
her,
have
she
been
had
okay
her,
with that.
her sex with Jamie and all that, and she was knighted. And
I mean, I
whatnot.
would have been sad. It would have been a tragic death, but it
Yeah.
would have been a well-deserved one.
Actually, no.
Or-
Did they have sex after the battle?
Yeah, I think they had sex after the battle.
But he had knighted her before the battle.
But
He knighted her in
before
episode
the
2.
battle.
So like that could have been like a
They
really
didn't
good.
have to have sex, but like they definitely she
but
had
at least
to be
the
knighted. That was
knighting,
important.
like him acknowledging her as a knight,
Yeah.
as a sir, as something
Right.
that she's been wanting her entire life. It's like really is the culmination of everything that character is.
So I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna say that a lot of people out there are mad about the final season because of what happened to Daenerys.
Oh,
and
yeah,
how,
that's a big
and
thing
like
too.
I know there's a lot of like that. One of the things that a lot of people loved Game of Thrones for was how it empowered women and how there were empowered women in the show. You have Daenerys, you have Arya, you have Sansa,
even Cersei.
Cersei,
Yeah.
and a lot of people, a lot of the arguments that I've heard were mad about Daenerys and her turn at the end. And we could talk about this for hours.
I'm not
I
mad
know
about
that-
her turn. Like you and I have talked about this before off the pod. But it's just how it unfolded.
The short version of it is I don't think that that's a valid thing to be mad about. I think that, or not how it unfolded, but the turn that happened. I don't think that's valid to be mad about. And if you're mad about it because like they ruined, like I'm doing air quotes with my fingers, they ruined an empowered female. Like I don't think that's what the goal ever was. If you want to look at an empowered female, Sansa is the example of an empowered female, and she gets a really dope ending.
Yeah, her arc is perfect.
Brienne of Tarth is an example of an empowered female. She gets a dope ending. Arya Stark is an example of an empowered female.
Yeah.
She gets a dope ending. Daenerys Targaryen is an example of a Targaryen, and she gets a Targaryen ending.
That is the perfect quick summary of that.
Yeah, and then she gets a Targaryen ending, and I think
She is
that
the truest Targaryen.
and I think that like it really fits the way that the story has been written,
Mhm.
just the way that Benioff and Weiss presented
It's
it.
just one of those things that
feels-
needed more time, I think.
Yeah,
like I just think like
the final season.
if the final
was
season had been
rushed.
10 episodes, if the last 2 seasons had been 10 episodes, and they just kept 10 episodes, if Benioff and Weiss were in such a rush to ruin their own fucking greatest work, like
Yeah, I don't know. I could
we
rag
got a
on
whole
them all
tirade
day because
about
they
the double D's. They
had it all and they threw it away. It's the hubris.
It's disgusting.
The hubris.
It's fucked up, dude.
It
They
is.
like, and it's particularly fucked up, and I know we're kind of breezing through these points, but again, super long episode, guys. Like, it's really messed up when like you watch. Ben, I don't think you said you didn't see this yet, but I watched the documentary about the making of the season, and it was mostly from a production standpoint.
So it was all the people who put so much into the
these
show.
people, like these families who were separated from their children for months at a time. These people who were working for 11 weeks out in the the cold all night. People were getting sick on the set and passing out, and just people poured everything they had in their human being to make the greatest spectacle that television or even film, and to a large extent, had ever seen. And the writing was just not on par with
ruined.
it. And that season will always be remembered for its missteps in writing. And those people's work will never get the proper recognition that it deserves because of that.
Game of Thrones,
That's fucked up.
in my eyes, will remain the greatest show ever made. But
it's tarnished.
It won't be in the eyes of history because of that final season.
Even in your mind, it still has that pock on it. It's not like, what I mean?
absolutely,
You're go,
absolutely.
this is the greatest show ever made. Well, the last season, but
the last season wasn't as good as the rest of it. But you know what? Like the things that make the last season so painful aside, there are things that happen in that last season that are groundbreaking and incredible.
Oh yeah. The whole Battle of Winterfell.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Okay. A lot of
destruction
people
of
say it was
King's
too
Landing.
dark, but like, it was fine. You just calibrate your TVs better.
Yeah.
What I will say is that like I will
Rainbow.
never forget the scene where Jon and Daenerys have their final encounter with
That
the
is
white
beautiful.
snow in the background and like the contrast of
which
the
was a
blood.
payoff of like her prophecy
Yeah.
from season 2,
Mm-hmm.
which we thought it was snow, but it's actually not snow. It's ash.
Yeah.
Because she burned down the city.
Because she burned down the city. I know,
Yeah.
I say snow, but like,
Yeah.
ash. Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
It's insane. It was such a beautifully shot, beautifully written. The song that they play is like,
the way that the
gives me
vast
chills.
majority of the story beats landed is okay with me, but it's like it's just there's so many little things that add up. You know, like a lot of the inconsistencies, like a lot of the weird little plot holes around like Euron and like the dragons getting killed, and like the way like to me we talked about Daenerys's like snap feels kind of sudden, and like there's so many better ways it could have been done, or
snap was
more time could have been put into it, like
thing to do, and maybe
or Sam like being so invested in Jon, you are the true king, and then he definitely should have died in the battle.
Winterfell.
Yeah,
Sam should have died. The only person who died was like the one person I didn't want to die.
Theon.
No, fucking Lyanna Stark Lyanna Mormont.
Oh, Lyanna Mormont.
Mormont. Yeah. Lyanna Stark's been dead a long time, but Lyanna Mormont is like the only one who dies at the Battle of Winterfell other than Jorah.
Oh, Jorah
and Theon.
Jorah, that was a perfect death.
Jorah has a perfect death, and Theon has a fitting death.
Pretty good.
Like he redeems himself and then dies.
And Arya killing the Night King is awesome.
Arya killing the Night King.
That's not
anybody
a thing that
anybody who's
about.
mad about that is dumb.
Yeah,
because like that totally is like she
People
was
just wanted
bred
Jon.
by the god of assassins for her entire
this
life.
This was her purpose
to kill the Night King.
This was her entire purpose.
That's why she exists. That's why she got magical powers. That's why she went to Essos. Like that's why this happened. Jon didn't get brought back to life to kill the Night King. He got brought back to life to let Arya kill the Night King.
Yep.
Like, and I think that's great. I think that's like an awesome.
I agree.
Like writing thing that they did.
Yeah.
I think that like it makes me sad that like Jon doesn't really get a great ending. I think he gets the ending that Jon would have wanted. Jon Snow, like he gets the ending that he would have wanted as a character. It doesn't feel like a satisfying ending as a viewer.
Right.
And I don't think that's a fault of the story. I think it's a fault of the presentation of the story.
And that's one of those things that like if it had more time put into it, like if it had more time in the arc, literal more screen time, it
was just like at the last moment they're like, well, Jon can't be king, so we're going to send him to the north instead of executing.
And Grey Worm's like, that's cool, I'm going to let this little prisoner dwarf man call all the shots.
I mean, what like the implication is that Jon is going to the north to be the true king of the wildlings. Like that's the implication that they've made. And like if that was a little bit clearer, or if they like made that feel a little bit more like what Jon really wanted, which is it is what he really wanted. I mean, he says as much a number of times in the show. But it doesn't. It feels like he's getting cheated out of the throne that he obviously deserves because of like what's his name? Grey Worm, who's just salty that his queen is dead. Like that also didn't feel like it made sense to me.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, I wouldn't have minded if like Jon say did end up on the throne, you know, because he had to or something, because like there was no one else. Like
that would have been, like,
you know,
that would have been a fine but cliche ending.
Yeah,
I think the end, it would have made more sense if
I'm not mad that he didn't.
I would have liked it better if instead of Grey Worm being the reason why Jon can't be on the throne, if Jon chose to go into the north of his own volition,
right,
and gave up. Like, and said, I don't want to have the throne. I'm leaving. Like, I'm leaving Westeros, or at least I'm leaving the Seven Kingdoms.
Yeah.
Like, that would have felt like a much more fulfilling ending to Jon's story. We wouldn't have had the Grey Worm bullshit, and everything else could have happened basically exactly the same. I mean, like, I don't mind Bran becoming the king and the king of the Seven Kingdoms. Yeah. I just don't like that the writing that they gave for him, like, and this is a Benioff and Weiss issue again, because the actor who played Bran has talked as much about how like it was really
they made
hard
him
to play
basically be cardboard.
Yeah, they made him be cardboard because every time he showed emotion, he got in trouble for it.
Yeah,
and then at the end of the show, they're like, be cardboard, but you have to be funny and witty too. Yeah. And it's like you can't.
It's inconsistent.
You can't be both. Yeah. So like when he starts like saying the funny and witty things, it feels disingenuous.
Yeah, because it's the same character that just like talked to Sansa about how beautiful she looked the night she was raped. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and now he's making witty remarks about how he was planning on being the king from the beginning, and that like,
which also like
into his hands.
There's some pretty dark connotations if that's the case.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think that like if it was like
all the people
we're
you
gonna
let
make
die
him,
while you're just chilling on, I'm the 3-eyed raven. I can never be the king.
Yeah, I mean,
Son.
if it's like, all right, we make the 3-eyed raven the king because we have to, and then Bran is like, that's like, I've seen the future and this is the only thing that works, and like I will reluctantly assume this position. I feel like it would make more sense.
Yeah,
but instead it was like, that was the plan all along. What do you think I came all the way here for? It's like
dumb.
That's dumb. That's bad writing. That's a bad line. And
it's like like when we talked about this, when you talked about it last week off the pod, you know, just like the show was always great when the writers and Benioff and Weiss
cared about it.
Well, yeah, but when they had George's broad strokes, right? Like they never struggled with the little stuff. They
once
never struggled.
Once they
with
got
like,
off the book, it became a little bit
because
tricky.
they're just not the same level of same caliber of storyteller that George R.R. Martin is, and few people are.
But I mean, season 7 was
so
pretty
to an
good.
extent that's not as much their fault, but like they knew what they were signing up for.
Yeah, I agree.
You know,
I agree. I think that it feels to me like the showrunners just didn't want to do it. They got tired of doing it. They got burnt out.
And like you said, out of spite, or just
out of spite, decided to do some stuff
like
because they
assassinate
wanted to be done.
Jamie's character.
Right? And I think it ruined the series.
Well, I have to agree with you in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
and
I think we should probably wrap it up.
We got to wrap this shit up.
Once again, you can find us at yourboomisintheshot@gmail.com. Thank you if you've listened this far. Thank you for listening to the whole 2 and whatever minutes.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. We love you, and we can't wait for you guys.
Keep your eyes out next week. We're looking at putting out another pretty awesome episode that'll be a little bit more contained.
Yes.
So
yes, it will. Briefer, more contained, more to the point.
And hopefully funnier, because I think that as much as this episode was fun, it's definitely not, we're not back into the stride of our...
No. Bear with us, guys. We definitely have to get our rhythm back, but well, we're excited for what we have in store for you guys to hear that.
You guys should be excited. We got
the dog's definitely excited.
Dog's excited, yeah. I mean, maybe he's just excited for the butthole tickling that we're going to do.
He's like, yo, talk about Rosemary's Baby. Hey.
Well, you brought it up twice now. Like, I'm gonna start saying it's your thing. Oh man, that's funny. Good night, guys.
Peace out, guys.
Your boom is in the shop. Come on, mister. Your boom. Come on, man. You boom.